Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Coming to you almost live from the Octarius in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, it's the Rolling Bad Podcast, episode number 114. Wow. It is August 15th, and I'm your host, Reverend Bill. I forgot to write an intro. Costello. And with me today, all the way from his Mech Boy workshop is...
Joshua, follow me, lads. Alt.
I'm like... Why did I write, did it suddenly get cold in here? That was for Beast Claw. Stupid. Yeah, my lack of preparation is showing. Oh, we're back. We're doing this again.
It's almost like we're on a schedule.
It is. It's like every 2 weeks we seem to be doing this. It's so cool. In the intro, slightly kind of weird news. I have not been able to get a hold of the winner for the Curse City box, so we may, if it hasn't happened by next show, we're going to just draw another name.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I've gotten nothing back from my outreach. So you can see it's still sitting there. And
yeah, I've been wondering about that.
Yeah, it's I've gotten nothing. Tried email a couple of times. I tried to get a message through Patreon, nothing. So weird.
Well, if you can hear us, and just...
Well, we haven't released his name yet.
I know, but... If you're still listening to our podcast, please look for Bill's emails.
Yeah, if you donated a lot of money. And, okay, anyway. But we are still, like I said, if it hasn't happened by next show, we'll do a new draw and contact the number 2 person. But that's really all I had for the intro. I will say the Discord is really starting to get crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It's hopping.
It is. It's really fun. If you haven't already, come and join us. You can get the link off of our Facebook page, or you can just reach out to us on Discord or through Instagram, and we'll provide you the link for it. Yep. Lots of really good conversations starting to come up. Everyone's
hobby. Ugh.
Oh, the hobby is amazing. Wolf Paints, Bitto, there's just so much talent in there. Occasionally, Bill and I will throw up our scraggly pieces of painted plastic on there, and hope that we don't fully embarrass ourselves. But
it goes back to that whole thing of you should surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
Yes,
so that you go, and that's what we're doing. We're just making sure that we are challenged at all times in our hobby endeavors.
Exactly. I already get challenged enough with my wife painting across the table from me.
Oh man, yeah, I know it's. I don't know if you go through this, but I go through this a lot. When my wife starts to paint models, and when she did her Tyranids, and when she did her Skaven, I'm looking at this thing and I'm looking at wow, what a pile of junk. I mean, that looks terrible. But she's a trained artist. I mean, she has degrees in art. And somehow, when she's all done, and she's putting that last wash or that last coverage or doing that last detail piece, it all of a sudden just comes together, and I'm like, holy crap, that's better than anything I've done in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, God, I hate you. I so hate you.
Yeah, it's when they flip that switch, there's certain parts where my wife's in the interim and just like, how's this look right now? I'm like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. And I don't know what you're going to do with the next shade, or, what you're going to do for the next highlight. And the next thing I know, it's just boom, immaculate. I'm like, what happened?
Exactly. It just boggles. I guess it's because I'm born into this the GW painting methodology of base coat, highlight, or layer, wash, highlight, done. That you kind of lose track of. There's all these other ways to go about it.
Yes.
And it's funny because you watch Miniac and you watch Squidmar and Ninjon and all these things, and you see these guys that don't follow that methodology, and you're like, oh, I see how he's doing that, and yet I never try to do it. Mm-hmm. I never attempt it because I'm like, oh, here's my base coat, yay. You fall back to what you know. So maybe I should challenge myself.
Maybe we should challenge each other, Bill.
Oh, ooh, a signature model. Oh.
And then using a painting technique that we haven't done before.
Oh, I like it.
So, I don't know. Bill and I will work on that, and then that might be featured on the next show. We'll see what we can get done.
Be. Wow. All right. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today we're actually going to be looking at, something for newer hobbyists, of course. We're going to look at list building.
List? That's way too complex to talk about on a podcast. What are you saying? What madness is this?
Well, it's our madness.
Okay.
So come along for the ride, folks. Again, this will be aimed for newer hobbyists.
Yeah.
We'll probably flex a little bit into if you're new to AOS but not new to wargaming. And so that way we can get you a little bit of like, where do you start? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, and also some, it's not going to be how do you make a Seraphon list. It's going to be more of what questions do you need to ask yourself as you're building a list? Or, if you bought a Start Collecting box and you now want to add to it, what are you looking at adding?
Yeah.
What should you be aiming for? In a very general sense, we're not going to get down to the nitty gritty of if you're Kharadron Overlords, you have to buy this next, because that gets a little crazy.
It really does. And you'd have to do entire shows devoted to each particular faction.
Oh,
to go
yeah.
over the many nuances within a particular army list.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what we're here for. We may have discussions like that, in the future, but as of for today, it's just how do you start? What are the questions you're asking? How are you building up your force? Where do you go next?
And what tools to use.
Exactly.
So, yeah, for sure. And, interspersed throughout all the different segments, we're going to have little questions and thoughts from the Discord because people bring up some pretty amazing points. And, why shouldn't we reap the rewards of their intelligence? In other words, we're leeching. So, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. Sounds good.
Sounds good to me, too.
So let's jump into New Dawn because we got a lot in
yeah.
there. There's a couple things. So not all of it AOS related, but
Definitely not.
We'll bring it back. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
First up for New Dawn, this is the weekend of Kill Team pre-orders.
Yes, sir.
Along with the GW promise that if you order by midnight at some random location in the world tonight, you will get Kill Team.
Yes.
That to me is, did you see that press release or that community release where they say, come pretty much flat out and say, look, we have really dropped the ball on the last few releases.
Yep.
And they actually used the term socks, which is, I know it sounds silly, but that's kind of a very, that's a word that is usually generally avoided in open forums for bigger companies.
Yep.
Because it is polarizing in some areas. Admitting that not getting what you want sucks and doing it this way, this is really kind of this was sort of an apology to the entire community saying, all right, we understand we've screwed some things up in the past. We're hopefully not going to do that again.
Yeah, and I do like how they call that out. Though there is the little bit of a rider that they had in the article where it's like, yeah, you're guaranteed to get it. Might be months later, but you're going to get it.
And, this is literally just wrapping the whole Indomitus idea of we're going to fill all the orders that we have boxes for, and then the rest are going to be made to order. And sorry, but you will get it.
Yep.
You don't have to sit there and jump on eBay, which to me is amazing because they basically undercut the eBay trade. Now, I'm sure, coming up, whenever these boxes ship, there's going to be a thriving eBay market for them, for the people that have to have it now.
Yep.
But if you're willing to wait, if Kill Team is your, side hustle, if it's your third girlfriend, yeah, you're fine. You're like, okay, so it comes in October. I don't give a damn.
God, I wish it was on a better release schedule because
yeah,
what's going on in my personal life is my wife is transitioning jobs.
Yep.
So she left her job where she was a phlebotomist, making pretty decent money, and she's going to go work at the local library now, which one is going to have much better benefits, and she can also go back to school, right?
Nice.
And so she saw me through law school. I'll see her through her library sciences degree.
There you go.
And so just like a really weird transition point, but we've got some money coming in from some investments and stuff. So
nice.
I'll be able to pick it up next week, I think, or whenever it comes to the store. I think it's a 2-week.
I think this is a 2-week pre-order. I'm not sure, but I believe, owing to the size and scope, I think it's 2-weeker, which actually is bad for us because it delays damn Stormcast.
Or does it? I don't know. We'll see here around 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Local time.
Exactly.
What's going to be pre-releasing next week.
Yep.
Dear God, let it be dragons.
Oh,
where
there be dragons.
Are the freaking dragons?
They
have been teasing us for a month and a half, I think, on it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Just, quit twisting my nipples. I just need this now.
Yeah, I'm thinking as slow as I paint, they should at least be looking around going, Bill has to get done by October. Mm-hmm. And the beginning of October for New Orleans. Let's get this stuff out the door. Yeah. Can you just maybe think of someone else for a change?
Yeah.
GW?
And who knows, depending on the rules, when we finally see them, I might have to play Dragons at New Orleans if we go. There was some news last week, I think it was, that New Orleans is canceling the Jazz Festival, which starts just a couple days after the New Orleans event. So I'm a little nervous that stuff might get shut down.
The difference being, and I'm not as nervous, or I'm just putting my rose-colored glasses on, one of the two. The Jazz Festival is a much tighter packed crowd and a different environment than we're going to be. If you look at how Orlando is set up, I mean, it's literally a tennis court between tables, and it's so spread out, and masks are required, I believe. I'm hoping that they'll just do the same thing and not cancel it outright because of the Delta swing. Although, I don't know how GW managed to do this, but Florida, Louisiana, and Texas are the hardest hit states by Delta. We won't talk about the political ramifications there, maybe in After Dark, but it's just, they managed to pick the 3 hot spots for their events, thinking that, it's going to be, in the South, it'll be warmer, it'll be a better climate, people will be able to go. I'm like, how about, Michigan and Oshkosh and, I don't know, Cheyenne, Wyoming or something.
What about Albuquerque, New Mexico?
Whoa, what a thought.
We have a giant convention center
that's kind of unused right now.
That could have been used, and it's not too far from Texas and
Arizona and California and
Colorado.
Denver Colorado. And I don't know. I'm just saying it's a thought for you. And I can get you in touch with the event coordinator for the Civic Center if you want. Just saying.
Just saying.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but the event coordinator for the Civic Center is a player. He's
I met him at the shop. Really nice guy.
Yeah,
really
and he's super interested in putting together something along this line. So watch this space. You never know. We might be in that at some point.
Yes.
Might have to talk to Reese when I go to LVO. So the Kill Team releases are all out there. That means the Kill Team box. That means the compendium. That means the dice, the extra cards, the extra look. You need these, except that they're in the box, and you need these, except that they're in, yeah, here, buy all our stuff.
Yeah, and, I mean, if you're not interested in either of the 2, kill teams,
yeah,
or the terrain, like I hate orcs, whoever you are, I don't like you, but
wow,
like I hate how orcs look, and I don't like Nazis, so I'm not going to buy the box, but I want to get the rules and the cards and everything.
Yeah, it's all out there. You can basically put the whole thing together without buying the main box. Mm-hmm. So you will get everything you need, which is a good way of doing it. I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, I don't need that stuff.
Yeah.
I have enough terrain to last me for years. Thank you very much. Bye. So yeah, it's cool. It's awesome. It's huge. I love it. There's some Black Library releases.
Yep.
And to be honest, I completely skipped over them. I don't know even what they are. Do you know what they are?
Yeah, I don't follow that stuff.
I'm like, wow, I don't. Yeah, there's some books that came out, and they're probably cool.
Probably.
So, because the big thing was Kill Team, I had to get to the store really early to get in that. But I got it. I'm very happy.
For me, and we're going to talk a little bit more about like lore stuff later on. Like the books that I buy and actually read are just like super targeted to things that I like.
Yes.
So if I don't like immediately see something that I'm like, I want this, I just put it out of my mind.
Yeah. The books that came out were The Chronicles of Malice Darkblade, Volume 1. So it's a basically an omnibus thing. Then Coven's Blood, which looks like, I don't know, could very well be a Daughters of Cain book.
It's the paperback version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already out. Yeah.
I've got the hardback.
Yeah. And that looked, Hellwinter Gate hardback. So that's a 40K book. So.
Who likes 40K? God.
Oh, stop. Yeah, that was kind of the new stuff from GW. We have some other things that we wanted to talk about in New Dawn. One of the things I wanted to talk about was I picked up, when I was on my vacation trip through Phoenix, I picked up a start collecting Vanguard for the Stormcast Eternals box. I got it just because it was there, and I liked everything that was in that box, and I wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got home, and I was all happy. And a couple of weeks ago, I had bought the Hunters box, the Vanguard Hunters, the new repack box. And someone posted online a picture of the back page, which shows the stat line for the Vanguard Hunters. And it was completely different from the old stat block. And I looked at my box, of course, opened it up, and I was like, holy crap, Vanguard Hunters just got really good. And I'm like, ooh, this bodes well. So, yeah, Stormcaster changing. And while we don't have the book yet, God dang it, I want to see that book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're really selling me on Stormcast, man. Like, they're cool.
Between the Stormcast are cool.
Stormcast are cool.
And between that and the Krull Boys,
oh yeah,
the teasers that they have dropped for those, I mean, that Beast Skewer.
Oh boy, I was ranting about that on the Discord. There was a good conversation about the Beast Skewer.
Yeah.
All right, so the rules, how it reads is that whenever you choose to shoot the Beast Skewer bolt from, which is that's the one orc shooting the tree,
yeah,
right? Like literally shooting a tree at something. It says that you roll a number of dice equal to the target unit's wound characteristic.
Yeah.
Every 5 up, you increase the damage by 1, and it's a base 2. And so just quick instant math on it. If you're shooting at a Mega Gargant with 35 wounds, you are going to, on average, add 11.55 damage,
Jesus.
or round up to 12,
Yeah.
to it, but it maxes at 12, right? So
Right.
You're well within tolerance range, on average, and you can spike, not that it matters, but you're going to be shooting a 12 damage weapon
Yes.
at Mega Gargants.
Yes.
Also, too, it's a Cruel Boy. And so you throw some poison on that bad boy.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it's,
Poison?
that's 12 mortal wounds.
Dear God.
Right? So which of your guys doesn't have the Amulet of Destiny?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that one. Okay, so all 3 of my guys are going to shoot. So, joking in the list, if you're going to do the, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, but if you're going to do your Bad Yellers shooting setup,
Yeah.
it's just start with 3x6 of the Bolt Boys, 3x1 of the Beast Skewers, a Swamp Shaman, and then see where it goes from there.
Just whatever you got. Yeah. It's absolutely nuts.
Stormcast stuff, oh God. Like, I think it's going to swing towards them being more competitive.
Yeah.
Mainly because the new rule that they will count as 3 models
Yes.
on their back objectives, first, second turn, something like that. And then as the game progresses, they will then count as 3 models on other objectives.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to give them a flat out advantage across the board.
What's this? I have 5 Liberators at 95 points, and they count as 15 models on this objective?
Yeah.
Okay. I will buy that every day.
Yeah, that kind of eliminates your Squig meta, your Grot meta, your Noblars. It kind of overdoes it.
Yeah.
The unit of 4 Gluttons isn't gonna stop my Liberators anymore.
Exactly. And to think that if someone's not in Taker Tribe and you've got 10 Libbies on an objective, you outdo the Mega Gargant.
Yes. Yeah. So,
It's amazing. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that they're going to be so good at scoring objectives, particularly because they can deep strike in still. It's going to be a game of just trying to deny. If you're low model count, not going to be easy, and then they're just going to have other things that could just fly over to the objectives.
To me, it's just a very strong signal that they actually want to put Stormcast back as the poster boys for the game system. I mean, we've mentioned it before on the show that these games, 40K and AOS, really work when your poster children are good.
Yes.
It gives everyone, because, I mean, these guys almost naturally exist in all of the getting started, all of the introductory stuff. And if they are crap, like they Stormcast have been for so long, no one's interested in picking up that starting box, which is what you're using to get people hooked in the hobby.
Yep.
So you kind of have to do this. This is why Space Marines will always be at least mid-tier or better.
Yeah.
Same thing with Stormcast.
And, they really need to get back there. It shows that they're doing a lot of Hammers of Sigmar support.
Yep.
Given that they're getting their, they didn't call him a Primarch, but,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But he's practically a Primarch. And then saying that the Hammers of Sigmar will be able to do battle line for all the Draconis Knights.
Yes.
I think they're signaling a strong return to them. But then
Yep.
they also like spoiled some really amazing thing like Astral Templars.
Oh my God.
Just can't be affected by Monstrous
Rampage at all.
at all.
Yeah, you don't have to take Hunters of the Heartlands. They have it inherently. And that is the truly anti-giant meta. That's the Stormcast, Beastclaw Raider meta right there.
Exactly.
Turn off your monster crap.
And talking about, your Vanguard that you just purchased,
Yeah.
apparently Vanguard is going to be real good in Astral Templars.
Boy, they're good. Yeah, I mean, I am dying to see what they do with the Storm Hosts and how they change everything to work in the 3.0 edition. Because you can see there's a lot of things that have to change in order to make it fluid with the new edition. But I mean, they're not gonna be changes that go over the top. But like when I saw the stat line changes, I mean, these are honest to God stat line changes to Vanguard Hunters. They just got better at shooting and melee. So they're basically a combination of Liberator and Judicator. They're just flat out good. I'm sorry, run and shoot. Thank you.
Yes, all day.
Just made my threat range so much nicer. Well, I mean, that was always their rule, but it's just so much nicer. And it kind of makes you look at your other options of, do I take the 95-point Liberators when for 140 I can get these guys? We should do a segment on list building.
Oh, we probably should get to that at some point.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
So also teased out was the new White Dwarf. I forgot the number. It's going to be 257 or something or 157.
Yeah, I think that's the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, they're going to have Path to Glory for Sons of Behemoth. Really? I mean, really? Wow.
I mean, it's so weird to play Sons in that kind of setup at first. Like, because Sons really starts singing when you get like at least 2 of the Mega Gargants.
Yeah.
Right? But, based on how Path to Glory starts, you start at 600 points. So you're probably starting, between, 85 and 120 points down from what your opponents can possibly do. Right? I mean, cool, Triumph, but you only have the one.
Yeah, you have one model.
Mega Gargant. You can't take babies. You can't do any of that because the points are restrictive.
Yeah.
Then when you get to 1,000, things get interesting.
Yes.
Right? Being able to stomp around with, 1 and 3 babies or 2 megas.
Yep.
But I'm really interested to see what like special rules they get, what type of things. I mean, because they're talking about how everything is going to get that release in their new battle tomes.
Right.
Which signals to me it's like, well, we think Sons is already positioned really well for third edition.
And
so
they're not getting a tome anytime. I think we will probably see a White Dwarf Path to Glory for Soul Blight because they just came out and you can tell that book was written for third.
Oh, yeah.
So they will have to get like a White Dwarf treatment or, barring that, please just give us a book with everybody in it. Don't, we had this big talk on Discord about this drip feeding Crusade and Path to Glory makes it to where people aren't going to play it because there's that guy that doesn't have a book who's like, oh, well, you have all this stuff and I have nothing. I have the basic book stuff, which compared to what you have is crap.
Yep.
And he's just beginning, you're just basically saying, well, we're going to have 2 different games, one for the haves and one for the have-nots. And that's not right. So give us a book, God darn it. We talked about, 25 August, Warhammer Plus.
we're almost there.
10 days. I am so jazzed. Except, well, yeah, no, I am totally jazzed.
I'm totally jazzed as well.
This is going to be awesome.
Given the fact that I already pay for, the other 2 apps.
Yeah.
And then combine this together for an extra $1 and then I get all of it. Okay. And the streaming service.
And the
okay.
streaming.
And the models, because you get 1 to start and then you get 1 at the end of the year if you had a subscription for a year.
Right.
And so who isn't going to get the assassin? I don't know, but
I'm not. No, I'm kidding.
that Vindicar is just the coolest.
Oh, God. It's so good. I wonder if they're
amazing.
thinking it's going to be about a 50-50 split. And it's like, yeah, no.
No. No, I don't think that one's definitely going to be more Vindicare to start. And you get the benefit of again the other model later on. It's just a different mega boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, hey, Kit Bash for orcs, that's cool.
Yeah. How can you say no? It's
Free?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in. Yeah, give me free stuff. Yay.
So if I spend $60 over the course of a year. Not only do I get all my apps,
Yes.
not only do I get the new content, the shows
The
and
master
everything coming out,
classes, the bat reps, and all that good stuff.
I also get 2 models that are priced at about $35
$35 a piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm making money on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except that I'm giving you money. All right. Anyway. No, it's a smashing deal. And I'm really looking forward to those master classes with Louise. The way she paint is over the top.
Yeah.
And I kind of get the feeling that she's not going to, these master classes are not going to be, here's how I paint my orcs or my squigs. It's going to be, here's how you do things like OSL.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you do things, the stuff they've never gotten into because it's not easily approachable in their format. So they could quite conceivably start doing wet blending and, all these other things that are reasonably advanced techniques that are going to become, I like the way Louise teaches.
Yeah.
I like the way she shows how to do things. By making it approachable, you're going to see, the rising tide lifts all boats. Mm-hmm. So if we start seeing these things and they start making it easy, and quite honestly, one thing I really love is, I don't know if you watch the GW live streams, but they have always shied away from ever talking about a wet palette.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been kind of hot in England this year, a little bit hot. And like Chris Peach was like, I'm sorry, but I put this paint down on the palette, and by the time I'm ready to actually put my brush into it and hit the model, it's drying.
Yeah.
And so Louise made him a wet palette, and he has been proselytizing wet palettes ever since. So I think it's a matter of time before we see a GW branded wet palette. But they're also saying that, hey, you know what? This is a really good idea. You should use one of these.
Yes.
And they're not like, we don't sell it, so we can't talk about it. And that to me is signaling the idea that they understand there's a real world out there and your products aren't the only ones that people use.
Well, we talked about it any number of times living out here in the desert.
Yeah.
That if you're not using a wet palette, then you're going to go through paint really quick.
Yeah.
It's difficult to really make sure that you maintain the right consistency on your paints because they dry so quickly.
Yeah.
Unless you can keep your house really cool, refrigerated air, that kind of thing. But even then, it's still a dry climate. Yeah. So get a wet palette.
Yeah, I have refrigerated air, but I don't have a humidifier. So my house is really, really dry all the time. I can feel it. When I wake up, my nose is so dry, I think I'm going to get a nosebleed. So you got to have a wet palette. Maybe you live in an environment in Hawaii or, along the equator where you don't need it so much, but I got around here, you do. So let's jump out of New Dawn because that's pretty much all the new stuff. Let's jump into creation.
Sounds good to me.
You want to go first? Because you got a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I'd done until
you wrote it down.
Until we were writing it down. So I built the Star Drake that I purchased. That was so funny because me, Clayton, and Troy purchased a Star Drake one day after another. And so I got it because I'm hyped on dragons. I need them last week. So I got that. But then, as I'm going through the Stormcast stuff, I want all of my heroes to be female leaders if possible.
Yep.
Because I call them my leading ladies. So then I kit bashed the Lord Celestant into a Lady Celestant.
Yep.
Wasn't too much because I was trying to see there were no real torsos that really fit and nothing that really could stand on top of it. But when you actually put the Lord Celestant's armor on, there's so much obfuscating the chest and everything.
There's that big symbol that blazons right over the top of the chest.
I was well, that's easy enough then. So I took my favorite head from the Vindictor kit.
Yep.
Had to shave it down because, it's got her skin and stuff on top.
It's got
that way I can get it to fit in that nice little node. And she looks great. Started painting that. So my stuff's on Discord already. And I think I actually dropped one of the pictures on Insta.
Yeah, you did.
There's a Lady Celestant. I finished building orcs for 40K. Not all of the orcs. I still have boxes of orcs to put together for my wife. But
traitor.
There is no traitor, only orcs. So that one, I finished putting the Beast Snagga boys together. I did a Rugged Truck Squig buggy. Finished putting together the Squig Hog boys. Yeah, because I was missing one of the little grots on the back, so I had to finish that. And I have to say one thing about those models. I like what it's signaling the GW is doing, because the riders are wholly separate.
Yes.
And I was actually able to almost like kind of pop them on, like they almost snap on.
Yep.
In order to prime them. And then I can pull them off, get the paint job done. And then, if I want just a little bit of plastic glue, I can hit right there under the seat. Boom, set them on. Good to go, just to make sure that they don't fall off or anything. Absolutely fantastic. Then I built and primed 20 storm vermin and 20 clan rats, and I have 20 more storm vermin to make and 20 more clan rats to put together. I built and primed 3 annihilators and 5 liberators, and I finished painting my vermin lord deceiver. Based it last night.
Nice.
I think I might put a little bit of like ground cover on it. The basis I'm doing on mine is that it's the poisony swamps in Gur, kind of where the cruel boys might be around.
Yeah,
which I would also. That's how I based my cruel boys. I, have a little narrative with them fighting and everything.
Sure.
So it was a lot. I did a lot.
Yeah, you did. You did. And in retrospect, I had 2 weeks off and I did nothing. We did go out and play. So for me, my big accomplishment was while we were on vacation, we went through Phoenix and I was able to go to an IKEA. I just had to have the Swedish meatballs.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
So good.
Sorry. So good. just digging at Anders there. But I was able to picked up an Alex one of the Alex bookcases to replace the plastic one. And I basically got a lot of organizational furniture so that I reorganized the hobby room. And I actually have all my stuff now to where I can get to it and find it. It's, if you're OCD like me, it's really, really nice. I'm so happy with the changes I made here in the room. I was sitting there and we got back from our trip and I had a couple of days off still. And I was like, I don't really want to push on the Stormcast because I don't know what the new book looks like.
Right.
And so I looked over and sitting on my hobby table is the old kit that was called the Witch Fate Tour. It's a wizard's tower, basically. And I looked at it and I have had this thing built and primed for like 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I stole it from Elric a long time ago when he brought a bunch of his stuff over here to store. And I saw that kit and I was like, oh, I've always wanted one of those. And I just took it. It's just fair.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I built it up and I'm still missing the stairs. I don't know where the hell the stairs went. And it always struck me as odd that the way the Witch Fate Tour is set up, it's set up in 3-4 levels, and all of which have room to put models inside. But it came out during Fantasy, which everything was in movement trays, and you couldn't fit the movement trays inside of it. So it was like, well, this must be for D&D, So yeah, that thing's going to do double duty for D&D and Age of Sigmar. It's a great kit, and I got it all painted up. I put it up on that Instagram thing.
Oh man, that would be really cool for Warcry with the different floors.
And everything. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be sick. That would be sick.
Yeah, it's every floor is playable, and it's like it said, there's stairs to every floor. I'm thinking about just making wooden ladders and just gluing them in there. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, because I can't. It has these, the granite steps or the stone steps that go between the floors, but that's going to eat up some playable space. So I might just put wooden ladders in there and be done with it. So that got done.
It looks great. It looks fantastic, though.
I love it. It was so much fun to paint. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And you can put as much detail into it as you want. It's just fun. Let me see. What else did I do? I also wanted to say something else about IKEA. And if you have a local IKEA, which we don't, our closest one is like 400 miles away. One of the things they sell at IKEA really cheap is cork. And they have cork. They call these things heats. They're like trivets for the kitchen.
Yeah. And
they're like, I don't know, maybe 3/8 inch thick pieces of cork. And they're like, I don't know, $3.99. And then they have these big IKEA 365. They're coasters. They're probably about 3/4 of an inch thick. Make absolutely awesome plinths or models. But also, this is just free cork. And I don't know if you've priced cork at Hobby Lobby or Michael's lately. They seem to be awful proud of cork at these different craft stores.
I haven't actually priced cork in a while.
Yeah, they're awfully proud of it. And for what you pay at IKEA, it's super cheap to get as much. And if you just want to, if you're just going to carve this stuff up to make small rocks for your bases, it's awesome. It's just awesome, great deal. Super, super cheap and super easy. And if you just like basing on cork, boom, it's almost done for you. That was just my little hobby tip. Just a tip. So I did build the terrain out of the Extremist box.
All right.
So I still have to prime it, but I want to build a Realmscape expansion box first and then prime it all together. So
that sounds efficient. Why would you do that?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but it gives me something to do while I'm waiting for the Stormcast book. And like you said, I've been building the Paladors and I'm going to build the Hunters because I know those are going in my list. I'm pretty sure in the Long Strike Raptors with Long Strike bows.
Yeah, those are looking really good right now.
Oh man, they are just talk about the monster meta. They're the equivalent almost of the, not quite as good as the skewers for the Cruel Boys, but they're damn good. And I saw a list that had 9 of them.
Oh my God.
And the guy was just plotting out the number of wounds to a Gargant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, with good rolls, wow.
Yep.
You could drop a Gargant in a turn.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, if you drop a Mega Gargant.
Well, that
like
you'd have to have the
one.
Celestar Ballistas with it.
Yeah.
So
If you drop a Mega Gargant top of 1.
yeah.
Oh God.
Talk about demoralizing for that guy.
Yeah.
Before he ever gets to do anything with it, it drops. And if you're going to go in Stormcast, you're probably going to go in with your 1 drop. Chances are you're going to have that advantage.
That might be 2 drop for Hunters, right? Or 3 drop, depending on what you take. Anyway, we'll talk about that in list building.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we will. So I think that's kind of our creation. I think I'm going to get into some of the other stuff I did. While I was at IKEA, I got chocolate bars for Anders. So,
Awesome.
Yeah. It's always good to bribe your local Games Workshop manager. And being as he is from there and likes those, that was a good bribe.
Yeah. What you get for bribing a Games Workshop manager is a free bag with every purchase.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break and then we'll go into battle real quick.
Sounds good.
I don't want to talk about my game, but I want you to talk about yours. All right, we're ready to go into battle. You've got you want to do the other stuff before your game, or do you want to do your game and then the other stuff?
Let me do my game real quick because
Okay.
it was a really short game.
Okay.
So, I had all those 40k orcs. And I love playing 40k orcs
But why? Why did you build 40k orcs?
because I've had that army almost since I started the hobby. And I love them so much. Like, their play style is so fun. It is a little bit of run up and smash them in the face, but they have, there's nuance to it. And when you use your tactics, right, as a Blood Axis player or, anyway. Anders started a 40k Warzone Caradon league that's about 5 weeks long.
Yep.
There are 3 different factions that you can play for. And when I say factions, you have Defenders, which is supposed to be the Imperium side of thing. You have the Invaders, which is supposed to be more aligned with the Chaos stuff. And then you have the Raiders, who are just there to mess stuff up.
To be there.
Yeah.
That's everyone else.
Yeah. So that's naturally where my orcs are, the Raiders. I couldn't see them helping the Umis defend, the place. I couldn't see them, going with the spiky Umis, trying to invade the place. They're just like, no, we're here to get scrap, and we're here to, scrap as well.
Yeah.
Went in for some crumping yesterday. So we get extra points. We use the Crusade rules. I use the Crusade rules.
Yeah, you got to.
I built a list that is 500 points on the dot.
Oh, geez.
Right now I'm proxying it, but my Warlord is a beast boss on Squigosaur. Based on all the pictures and everything, I was able to map out that it's the same base size as a Mangler Squig. So I proxied my Mangler Squig for that. Then I had the 3 Squighog boys, the Knob on Smash a Squig. I had 10 Beast Snagga boys, and then I had a Beast Boss on foot. And I went up against Grey Knights. And
Old Grey Knights. Not the new book, right?
it was the new book.
Oh, it was the new book.
It was the new book.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Thing is, we'll get to it in a second, but 500 points is very restrictive for
Yes.
Space Marines. The my opponent didn't want to take a nasty list. He wasn't going to be like, here's, Grandmaster and Dread Knight. You know, because there's an element of wanting to have some fun. I didn't bring my Gorkanaut, for example, because I didn't want to just claw blast everything off the board with this thing. I ended up taking something that's nastier, apparently.
Evidently.
Yeah. So with the new orc rules, because I did get the new codex, I love it. It's so much fun.
Yes.
And that beast boss on Squigosaur is nasty. Just nasty.
Yeah, it is. It's quite good.
We're playing on really small boards. and we went into the 3 combat patrol options in the narrative portion of the core rulebook, and just rolled a D3, sorry.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting deployment that was actually like horizontal, right? So length of the board. So we were really close. It was essentially 10 inches from deployment.
Oops.
My squigs moved 10 inches.
Yeah.
So his list, he had a chaplain, a unit of Brotherhood Terminators, and 3 paladins, right? Because that's all he could fit with 500 points, right? And since we're doing crusade rules, need to make sure he didn't have he wanted to make sure his warlord could advance, so he didn't just bring one of the named characters.
Sure.
But all in all, pretty fair list. Problem is that I got first turn.
Oopsie.
And he put his paladins in the teleportarium.
Oopsie.
And so he was deployed near, one of the objectives, and I was going to be able to spread out my boys to hit multiple objectives. I was playing snake bites as well, so all of my infantry is OBSEC. And also you have essentially, if there's not a strength 8+ weapon, you have transhuman on all of your units.
Yeah.
And my beast boss on Squigosaur was souped up. He had the beast hide mantle, so he had +1 attack and a 5-up feel no pain. And then he also had brutal but cunning, so he gets to re-roll any dice that don't make it to the damage step. It hasn't been FAQ'd yet that I know of, but I didn't take Goffs, where it's as rules is written right now. If you spike 6s on your hits, because Goffs get 2 hits for every 6, you just almost attack infinitely.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So snake bites, it actually fits the theme of the Squig Boys better. So
a little bit.
Rushed in, turn 1, took 4 Brotherhood Terminators off the table. One was alive with 1 wound.
Oh, God.
So then he's already down to 2 models on the board, 3 in the teleportarium. So he drops his paladins down, and he's trying to take out my knob on Smash the Squig. Only 5 wounds, tough 6. Comes in and just unleashes everything he's got on it. Does 2 wounds in the shooting phase.
Yeah.
I was like, oof. Okay. So then he makes an 11-inch charge.
Oh, my God.
To get in. Gets in with the Smash a Squig and goes for it. He does 2 wounds. So my Smash a Squig is alive on 1 wound. In combat with Smash a Squig, and it also pulled in the Squig Hog boys.
Oh, Jesus.
Meanwhile, my general was still in there with the Brotherhood Terminator. Brotherhood Terminator just bounced off the hide of him, and then he just crushed him. Then go to top of 2. I charge into the Terminators with my Beast Boss on Squigosaur and just delete them.
Yeah.
And at that point, he called it.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, because his chaplain was trying to run away on like a 5-inch move. So
yeah, it's not happening.
No, it wasn't happening. And so because of all the points and everything that I got through that for experience, I was immediately able to level up my Beast Boss. So I gave him a Crusade Relic, and he now has +1 strength +1 strength because of the Artisan Bionics, and he has another 5-up feel no pain. So he's already getting to be ridiculous.
So the store campaign's basically over.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Good luck killing him. But what's really fun about the orc stuff, and I have to bring this, and the orc stuff is so cool. So whenever you create a crusade force for your orcs, you have to nominate one of probably your warlord, to be your wog boss.
Yep.
And so your wog boss, whenever they rank up and get battle honors, you can get +1 to strength or their wound characteristic for the remainder of the campaign.
Right.
Not only did I level him up and give him +1 strength from the Artisan Bionics, he got +1 strength because he leveled up.
Jesus.
And it caps at 2, so you can never do more than +2 strength but +2 wounds. At any point, if another character is at the equivalent experience points as your walk boss, they have to fight.
Yes.
And there is a whole procedure for them fighting to see who's going to be the boss. And if your walk boss, wins, then you go to just 1 experience point above the other one.
Yeah.
If the other model wins, they become the wog boss and gain enough experience to be higher than the original one. And so it's just the most orky thing ever. It's so fun. It's so fun. I don't think my other characters are going to catch up to him at this point, seeing as he skyrocketed to 6 experience battle
game 1. Yeah.
So that was my game. It was really fun. It was really short.
Yeah.
The new orcs, man. I mean, orcs are always fun. They're just even more orky than they were before. So 40K fan, get in there.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one because I could either do my Death Guard or my Salamander. I really want to do my Salamanders again.
Do your Salamanders.
I love them so much.
Do your Salamanders, man.
Probably going to. Probably defend the planet.
Ah, lame.
Well, what are you going to do? That's what Salamanders do.
So the current defenders are Necrons
Yeah.
and Grey Knights.
Oh, God.
And the invaders are Adeptus Mechanicus and, oh, God, I forget the other one. I don't remember the other one. The Raiders are me and Custodes.
Jesus.
So you have the Custodes and the Orcs raiding the planet.
Oh, God.
And how the overarching thing will work is that the factions will win, depending on how many points they've accrued by playing a certain number of games. And then at the very end, the person with the highest points in each of the different factions will fight, right? So you have one defender, one raider, one invader, and it's like a three-way battle.
A three-way fight, yep.
And really interesting stuff, too, for the narrative portion of it. If you're a defender, you are always the defender on the maps.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yep.
And then if it's invader versus raider, then you have to
roll off. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. That's cool. I like it. I'm still leery about jumping in on that, but what the hell? It might be fun.
Just a few pickup games every now and then. I totally have forgotten so many rules in 40K.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's been probably 2 years since I played a game.
Yeah.
With COVID and everything. So I was like, this is an opportunity for me to get back in there. And as a hobby champion, I want to make sure I'm up on everything and I can help anyone on anything. I don't want to be like, oh, just go talk to the AOS guy over there. No, I want to be like the hobby champion for everything.
Yep. All right. So I'm not going to talk about my game because it was silly and weird. Let me see here. So from the Discord, one of the users, Checky, was talking about, our new hobbyist show. And he was saying that one of the things that he was looking more at was bringing back people that had left AOS or that had left the fantasy genre of GW. Let's just call it what it is, fantasy battles. Mm-hmm. One of the things he was talking about was, the new edition is great, but the common complaint that he's hearing is all you do is charge into the center and basically punch each other. And there are a couple of scenarios that are basically jump into the center and punch each other.
Yep.
But honestly, there's like 12, 18 scenarios.
God,
and
18.
Not all of them are jump into the center and punch each other, for one thing. And for another, I mean, I guess the game does sort of boil down into that at points, but I don't know. It doesn't always have to. Quite honestly, this is a miniatures war game. If you've ever played something like War Machine and Hordes, that's what happens. I mean, the idea is to fight. Like Anders always says, it's not pacifism hammer. It's Warhammer. And you're supposed to get into these big scrums and these big fights. And honestly, I don't see that as so much of a bad thing. Do you?
Not really. And I think that it's missing the point a lot when people say like, oh, you just run in the middle and punch each other. Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Vice. That is a scenario that on its face is literally you're on a collision course for the middle of the board where you're going to slug it out. And that was the first map I played in 3.0.
Yes.
And it was 2,000 points of Skaven versus Magakin. And I talked about it on the show before, but what won me that game was that I was able to teleport to a particular place and not only gain points, but deny my opponent points.
Yeah.
Right? Because of that. And there was that scrum in the middle at the very end.
Yeah.
And it was all about towing in just the right number of units in order to make sure I maintain that objective. While it on its face looked like I'm just running into smash, right? It was actually, if I don't do this right, I will tie. We will tie because of how everything moves forward. And so my answer really is that this is actually an objective game. Yes, there are going to be some big fights in the middle, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much inevitable, particularly if you take the battle tactic. Most models within 6 inches of the center.
Yeah, I mean, there are some mechanics that are going to force you into a big scrum in the center, but like you said, it's an objective-based game, and, in this game, there's a lot of objectives that disappear.
Yep.
And there's ways to make objectives go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to see the whole idea of this edition, I think, is to get more into combat and less. We've always maintained that the most important phase of this game is movement. Mm-hmm. Positioning your stuff is critical.
Yep.
If you're not good at it, you're not going to be good at the game. If you are good at it, you're going to win all the time, or a lot of the times. This edition is kind of, I believe in my heart of hearts, a little bit of an attempt to even that playing field up a little bit, where the positioning isn't going to be as critical as your ability to project force at certain points.
Yes.
And that is a lot easier concept to master than the exact amount of distance you need to have your bubbles working, as well as being within range of a certain thing or an objective or a unit. Those things are, I mean, you have to have a pretty good grasp of all the different concepts in order to make that work.
Yep.
Whereas in this game, if it does come down to fighting over 3 objectives at the end of the game, you eliminate a lot of that advantage that those people who are super good at positioning and movement have over the relatively newer players who don't have that down yet. So, I mean, I hate to say it, Checky, but I don't think that it's such a bad thing to have the game lead up to turn 3, turn 4 big combats and multiple unit combats. I don't see that as a detriment to the game. If the people that are stuck in the fantasy battles era and all they want to do is the rank and flank stuff, you're probably never going to get that guy back, because this is a skirmish game and it's not what he wants. And, you know, the new game that they're going to come out with in a year or two is going to scratch that itch probably, or, you know, Kings of War will scratch that itch. But this is probably not the game they're going to come back to. And you might have to just say, I don't think this is what you're going to get into, to those people. And, you know, I hate to say it, I hate to be exclusionary, and I'm always railing about how we're too much of a niche hobby to be excluding anybody. But in this case, if that's not what they want, if they don't want those big combats, if they don't want those kind of sweeping engagements that this game tends to generate, I think it's kind of a core concept of this game.
I mean, it can be. There's some armies that don't play that game. There's some armies that don't rush into the middle and fight. And so if they're looking for something that is much more finesse related, there are armies for them. I mean, frankly, as much as I hate playing against them, Lumineth Realm Lords is a very complex army with a very high skill ceiling and floor.
The floor is high.
The floor is very high. And if you don't know what you're doing, your army's just going to putter out.
Evaporate,
You know, and while I hate, you know, hour-long hero phases.
Yeah.
If that's the kind of thing where they want to be really working on making sure they do the right spells in the right order and the right synergies and the right buffs and positioning their pieces just right and not just charging into the middle, but making sure you use your melee in the right, not melee, your range in the right spot.
Yeah.
Making sure to, you know, resource management with your Aether Quartz. If you want to bring someone who wants that complexity in, then Lumineth is fantastic. There are armies that can do maybe what they want to do, that have shenanigans. Seraphon, they have a very straightforward play style most of the time, but you can be very tricksy with Seraphon, right? You don't have to play Monster Truck Rally with them.
No.
You can have the very finesse, teleport around, chameleon skinks, you know, sniping the right thing and playing a game that is much more cerebral, right, than straightforward.
Yep.
Now, most destruction factions, you're not going to achieve that.
They are straightforward.
Yeah.
And they are leaning heavily into that. This is what we do. We run forward and smash stuff. But Kharadron Overlords, I mean, they are winning a lot because the players that have played them for all time now have a rule set that makes their way of playing very, very good.
Yeah.
You still have to be good. You can really screw up KO and lose a lot, even with tournament winning lists, if you don't play them well. And they really do not like to get involved in any kind of melee in the center of the board. They would much rather be 10 inches away from everything and shooting it to death.
Yeah, they literally have a rule that lets them fly out of combat.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a thing. There's all kinds of factions out there. So for that person that wants to come back from the fantasy or even just first edition Age of Sigmar, there are definitely factions they could look at. I mean, if they've been running orcs or, you know, Iron Jaws the whole time, I'm sorry, but they play that way. They're going to get involved in the scrap, usually in the center or wherever there's an objective. And that's how they're going to play because that's what they do. But there's tons of other factions that don't do it that way. And, you know, I would approach that person and go, maybe you need to change armies. Maybe Free Cities isn't what you need to do. Maybe you need to look at Idoneth Deepkin and have a little bit wider range of board presence. Maybe you need to, look at something with more of a gun line. Maybe Sylvaneth, where you're all over the place. Your strength comes from being all over the place. So
Sylvaneth is a great example too. That is a really complex army to be able to master, since it is about positioning, not just where your models are. Are you teleporting to the right place? Are you setting the trees up in the right place? Yeah. Are you making sure that you remember all your rule sets, in terms of, this affects this tree because I cast a spell within an inch of it, that kind of stuff. There's a lot in there that these players who want that complex gameplay, because that's honestly, if we boil it down, they're just saying like, this doesn't look like it has strategy, right?
Yeah,
it's just
exactly
go punch each other in the face. No, there are tons of factions that have to require a high level of skill in order to be piloted well. You just need to show that to them. Think of Disciples of Tzeentch, and like Archaon might be your only thing that's running around smashing face. Well, your pinks run up and just hold objectives. It seems like it'd be very easy on its face, but there's more nuance.
And we're probably guilty of this at the same time. We talk about some of these meta blasting armies, the KOs, the Archaon with Tzeentch, as, it's an instant win button. Not really, because they have their hard counters, and, well, Archaon has no counters. There's ways of playing around those armies, and, we talk about them as, this is a beat face list. This is a list that just goes out and crumps. But if you are playing the right faction, and if you are playing it correctly against them, you can do well. Lumineth are doing well, Caradhran are doing well, mostly because the pilots for those lists have a lot of experience running them, and they're transitioning into a new environment that is very, very favorable for them right now. Mm-hmm. And it may not be that way in a month, and literally, I mean a month. It may not be just that great anymore. When the new Arc book drops and the new Stormcast book drops, you might see a big shakeup in the meta. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying it could potentially change where everything is ordered up.
It's true. I mean, these will be the first true 3.0 books. I know Soul Blight was, right there, and so it's made with 3.0 in mind, and it shows, because they are actually doing very well.
Yes, they are.
Right now. I think that when we see this new stuff come down, I mean, I can't talk enough about the freaking 3 models, counting as 3 models.
Stormcast. For Stormcast, that's
again, it's an objective-based game.
Yeah,
and when you've got 5 dudes counting as 15 models, I mean, that's blowing my mind just thinking about that for the points. But
that should tell you right then and there that this is an objective-based game.
Yeah.
Because that rule would make no sense if their idea was just get in the middle and make a big scrum.
Yep.
That rule would make no sense. So, yeah, I mean, just approach it that way. Maybe show that person a couple of bat reps with different factions that don't play. Just jump into the middle and scrum it out. So,
yeah. Lrl Skaven is a big one too.
Yeah.
Fire Slayers are just running to the middle, aren't they?
Just a little bit.
Orcs are running to the middle. All Destruction's going to do that.
Deepkin can really play the flanks awesomely well.
Oh, Deepkin's mobility is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so that does have a lot of fun.
Daughters of Cain. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, there's ways out there. Now, another thing that was brought up, and I mean, this has been the talk around the AOS competitive world for a little while, and we're going to hit on a little bit here. We're going to dive deep when we go to After Dark. But Byron and Ross, the Facehammer guys, released a pack for the Facehammer GT.
Yeah.
And in that pack, there is the dreaded comp. It's horrifying. At the same time, as I can kind of understand where they're coming from, but basically, in a nutshell, the army size is 2,000 points, unless you're playing Hedon Knights of Slaanesh and Flesh Eater Courts, where you get an extra 100 points, or if you're playing Gloomspite, Night Haunt, or Beasts of Chaos, you get an extra 150 points. So right off the bat, you're playing at 2150 with those guys. And that's just an overall rule. Then there are a bunch of house rules in this pack that are, and we're going to get into them later. I'm not going to lay them all out now. But basically, they changed a lot of the endless spells. And some of those changes I don't think are horrible. I think they're actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. And they might be this might be something that's coming down the pike. But they made some changes to the Lumineth and the Caradron. They basically fundamentally changed the play style for those armies with house rules. And the idea behind it was to eliminate the negative play experience that some people are seeing playing against Caradron and Lumineth. I don't think it's addressing the fact that if you're playing Lumineth or Caradron, you've basically had your army gutted. So this is a slippery slope. I don't want to see comp come back.
Yeah, I mean, there's some problematic changes in there and things that maybe, like, as you said, some things might be fair. But we'll dive into this in more detail. Fundamentally changing how people's armies work for various reasons can be very problematic.
And honestly, the big thing, so for the Lumineth, or literally what they did was the Spirit of the Wind. So Severeth or his unnamed version, they only do their shooting phase move in your shooting phase, not both shooting phases. This could conceivably be a change that GW is going to put out as well. I mean, I can see this as a needed and necessary change for how that unit works, because right now he is uncatchable and unkillable because of his ability to just simply not be where you can get to him.
Yep.
The flying transport rules for Caradron Overlords got changed in such a way that it gives them some flexibility and some it relooks at their basically transport rule. And it's kind of a well thought out change. I don't know if it's one that GW will incorporate. Mm-hmm. Overarching, the whole thing is I'm not gonna get down to the nitty gritty of each rule and what it does. But it's the idea that they believe that this is flat out necessary in order to make games against those factions not be a negative experience. And that to me is scary. I don't know.
Well, it gets even scarier after dark, so tune in for that, folks.
Yeah, if you want to hear the real thoughts and some real interesting takes, tune into the After Dark, which is available to Patreon subscribers. And I thank each and every one of you. We are getting to the point to where the show is almost paying for itself. So I'm jazzed about that.
Yes, thank you all so much for your support. It does help.
It really does.
A lot.
You have no idea how much it helps. It's awesome. Awesome. So that was kind of battle. We're going to jump into the lore segment that we talked about. And first up in the lore, and I know we didn't say this in the intro, but we're going to talk about something that Darth Jayan from the Discord brought up, and that was Aos Lore and where to get into it and how to get into it. And then we're going to jump into our list building segment. But for the first part right now, a little bit about the lore for AOS. And one of my pet peeves has always been people are knocking AOS because the lore is so empty. It's so vacant. And it's in comparison to Warhammer Fantasy that had 25 years of lore behind it. Yeah, Sigmar is going to look a little light in the lore department. However, they are churning out lore books, and they are churning out, every battle tome has lore. I mean, the core book from this latest edition is just chock full of amazing stuff.
It's at least 50% lore, I think.
Yeah. I think it's more like 2/3 of that book is lore.
Yeah.
If you're looking at how to get someone into the lore, I'm gonna nominate a couple of books right away that I think are hallmark books for Age of Sigmar. And the very first one is the very first book ever, and that's Gates of Azir. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very short story. I think it's like $3 or $4 on Black Library's site. It is the quintessential introduction to what this world is all about. And, I don't care. It's been 5 years. Spoiler alert. The best scene in that whole book is, you get this whole view of Sigmar sending the Stormcast for the very first time into the mortal realms to start the Realm Gate Wars, to start bringing order back to the chaos and to, basically jumpstart the world. The best scene in this whole thing is where, I think it's Vandus Hammerhand. It's Vandus, isn't it, in that book? I can't remember which character. Not Gardas.
It's been so long. I think it has to be Vandus.
It's one of the big Celestins. They're there. They've gone into the deserts of Akshi. They have captured the realm gate that they were supposed to capture, but he's really disheartened because there's nobody there. There's no humans. There's no non-chaos. They just basically have made the foothold, but the idea was to liberate people, and there was nobody. And then they find this running tribe of humans that was going away from the chaos forces that were chasing them just to kill them and enslave them. And those people are brought in front of him. And the first thing he does is basically kneel before them and say, we're back. We're here. Things are going to change. And it gives you this whole idea of, this is the idea of the Realm Gate Wars and then the Soul Wars and then everything. It's taking back the mortal realms from chaos. And even where we are right now, chaos owns 98% of the mortal realms. And Sigmar has a foothold, but it has to be fought for and it has to be defended. And that's the overarching story. Next up, the next book is Soul Wars.
That's a pretty good one, actually.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why they let Josh Reynolds go as an author. Soul Wars does have a spot in it where it really drags.
True.
That whole parade with all his Nagash. It's just so dumb. But it's overall, that book is really quite good for getting the flavor of Stormcast and Death. I also recommend Plague Garden.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is, if you want to find out how dumb Stormcast are, read that one because they are really stupid. And Black Talon, First Mark. Have you read that one?
I haven't read that one, no.
Oh, God, is that good. So it's just Knave Black Talon. It's just her. And it's her, as a hunter, it's her first mark. It's the whole thing rolls around this idea of how you make your mark in the world.
Interesting. Okay.
And
like legacy concepts.
Yeah. And it goes really in deep as to why the Stormcast are still fighting for Sigmar when I'm always saying, why don't these guys just rebel? You stole us and made us into basically slave fighting machines.
Yep.
She gives you the reasons why they don't just, be like, no, screw you, Sigmar. We're out of here. So those are all good books.
Then I see here you also got Realm Slayer for Gotrek.
Okay. Brian Blessed as Gotrek. I don't have to say anything else.
So that one definitely get an audiobook.
Yes.
What I like about a lot of the books in AOS right now, because it's still pretty fresh. It hasn't been around 25 years. It doesn't have the, Horus Heresy style tracing back. Realm Gate Wars is a pretty long series.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. I really like the books that dive into like one particular faction, right?
Yeah.
So like Coven of Blood. First off, cover art's amazing. I have the hardback edition.
Yeah.
Actually like diving in and like getting these, essentially it's 3 stories in Coven of Blood, and really diving into the culture of the Daughters of Cain. And they have a lot of books that will do things like that. I forget the name of the Gloomspite one, but that's another one where you see, how the Stormcast are going to wage war against, the Gloomspite Gits.
Mm-hmm.
That one was really interesting because it really starts to highlight Skragrot's cunning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so many of those books are just like really just like zooming in on one particular thing. Now there are the main books that usually come out with, the corresponding
The box set.
So right, Dominion just dropped.
Mm-hmm.
I just downloaded it. I haven't started it yet. Rumors are saying it's really good.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
And like they said, it really gets into why the Cruel Boys are the Cruel Boys.
Nice.
They're cunning and like how sneaky they are and how dangerous they are. I'm really, really excited for that because it's a different side of orcs, right? It's not run and smash. You got to be tricksy. You got to use your poisons, right? You got to use the mist. There's so many cool concepts in there that you'll be able to dive in and see it. And they're still building the lore. Heck, we did a whole series on Broken Realms.
Yeah.
That was a big move forward in the overarching
Huge.
storyline.
Yeah.
And so there's another place to look at lore, as you're getting caught up to the current stuff. All the recommendations here, and then, of course, all of the Realm Gate Wars. That's a good series to go back if you want to, like, get back to AOS from the beginning.
From the beginning, yeah. The Realm Gate Wars, those are lore treasure troves.
Yep.
So, I'm going to circle back to the core rulebook for 3rd edition, that lore section will catch you up
Like
to
that.
where we are right now. And it's a super well done topical view. And from there, you can kind of go, I want to look a little bit more into what this is. And then you can find that book on the Black Library site. You know, the Cursed City book was not too bad. And that was for just a box game.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I really liked the audio book for it.
Yeah.
The voice actor is fantastic, except for when he's doing Imelda. But that's like the only one that's not good. But he does such a good job of giving a distinct accent voice to every character he does. It's fantastic.
Yep. So honestly, you know, the way the lore is set up now, depending on what box set or book has come out, there is pretty much a novel that's dedicated to it. And then there's the overarching story things like the Soul Wars, the Dominion, the Realmgate Wars series. You can find the lore. It's out there, and it's getting better all the time as these writers hit their stride and as they kind of get an overall picture of where things are going, especially now that we've had the Broken Realms book come out. The authors kind of have a roadmap now. You know, one of the things that's always been easy with 40K lore is for the bigger books, for the bigger series books, it's really been easy because all that stuff is plotted out.
Oh, yeah.
For the individual, you know, for Inquisitor or for, you know, Eisenhorn series, Gaunt's Ghost, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You pick a few planets and nobody's ever going to see those again. Armageddon. So, I mean, you have a lot of free reign to do whatever you want. And, you know, like, look at what they're doing with wrapping up the Horus Heresy series. You know, they have plotted this stuff out and the authors have their specific chunk to write. There's a lot more, there's a framework that they can work off of. With AOS, they're still building that framework. They're still building how these things are going to interplay and what you can and cannot do. You know, the idea that they wiped out Nagash in one of these books, to me was just, my jaw hit the floor when they were like, okay, we've had this whole Soul Wars theme now for 2 years. Now we just slap him down into nothingness, and here's this Kragnos fella who's going to even things out. You know, here's Lrl going to come and even things out. And you know, really, the only major player who's kind of absent these days is Sigmar. And I think that is planned. I mean, I think, you know, as much as I give him crap about it, you know, for Sigmar being a clown show, I mean, I truly believe that this is planned. This is not just, oh, we haven't written a book about Sigmar in a while. Yeah, no, I think they know what they're doing. Yeah, there's lots of avenues to get lore. And honestly, just, you know, find the author that you like. And I tell you, Josh Reynolds is great.
Yeah.
I love his writing style. I really do. That's personal opinion. Some people hate it. They think he's boring. He's not Dan Abnett. That's for damn sure.
Who is?
But yeah, who is? He's not Aaron Dembski Bowden. Nobody else is either. So anyway, that's kind of our take on the lore a little bit. Now we have to jump into, well, actually, let's take a quick break and then we'll jump into list building for reasonably new players and ideas for existing players. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, on to list building.
Actually, some of the most fun you can have when you get down to it.
You know, yeah, truly, list building is like the solo portion of this game.
Yeah.
It's the thing you do at work, in the car, or at home. It's, you know, you could be building lists all the time. It's a never ending. You're always going to be tweaking your list. It can be the most fun, honestly. It really can be.
It really can be, yeah. I mean, it's in some ways it's almost meditative at times.
Yeah.
Just thinking through it, you know, my favorite time to really work on lists is when my wife's talking to me, and I just keep nodding along like, yes, dear.
Well, what happened if I had a plus? Oh yeah.
Are you listening to me? Yeah. You're talking about how your mom said the thing. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I love it. That's a hot take.
Yeah, it is. But hey, you know, we've actually talked a lot about the different types of gameplay there are.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about Path to Glory. We went into open play, right? Some people still think it's a sham, but I still think it's actually pretty fun for pickup games. And we've talked about tournament play. And all of these things, in order to play any type of game, one, we need a list.
Yes.
And the type of list that you're making does depend on what you're going to be doing. And so the very first thing is you need to determine what's the purpose of your list. What are you building it for?
Yep.
Are you going to be playing one opponent? Are you going to be doing a sort of battle royale? Are you going to be playing teams? You need to figure out what it is that you're going to do in order to have the just very basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be playing one opponent at a time. Okay. So then you need to go on to the next step. Is this going to be just a friendly game at the store, just a pickup game, just to try out your new models?
Yep.
Or is this on your path to glory? If so, you need to follow the rule restrictions within path to glory as you build your list and expand your list. Or are you teaching a friend how to play?
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, so he's going to bring his, start collecting plus the extra box he bought of Slaves of Darkness.
His Dominion box and his Start Collecting box.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so what can I play against that? Well, frankly, I mean, some of the Stormcast in there is really strong. But anyway,
Yeah, it's true.
What am I going to play against this, in order to just teach him, right? And not just come over here and club the baby seal.
Right.
Right. So then that's consideration on the other side for the more experienced player, right? And this is also really something to think about too when you think about how new is your opponent, right? Because your opponent may be new to AOS, but not new to wargaming.
Right.
They could be playing 40K forever, and then they're like, oh God, you know what?
They're just branching out.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, I absolutely love the horrible looking Stormcast Eternals from, when they were first printed. And so I want to put these big blocky bros on the table and swing. But I know how to play the game, right? Like this is someone who's probably done tournament play even,
Right.
40K. There's a way to bring them in like, all right, you're going to be more advanced. So I'm going to show you this army with some of my synergies, right? And things like that. So those are a lot of things to consider when first starting. And then, of course, the one a lot of people talk about is tournament, right? Are you going to go to the tournament? How viable is your army, in competitive play?
Yes.
And are you going to be trying to build a list for a, competitive advantage, right? Those are just, before you even start putting things together, right? What is my purpose?
Yeah, what's the overarching purpose? And, it can be, I'm going to say that list building as a tech tool is probably 75% geared towards tournament play. Because quite honestly, if you're putting together a narrative list, if you're putting together a list for Noob Hammer, to get people involved in the hobby, you don't have to put a lot of skull sweat into it.
No.
It's super simple. You just look at the units you're bringing and make sure that you're not going to be in a place where you win just because of your list.
Yeah.
And even then, you can correct that when you get to the game.
Yep.
And same thing with a narrative list. A lot of times you are limited in a narrative environment. You're limited to what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are going to build in limitations. Where the flexibility in list building really comes from is when you're getting ready for competitive games.
Yeah.
And so this is really what this is aimed at. We're not going to be hitting what to do to build a narrative list, because that really should be, a narrative list is by definition narrative.
Yes.
And you already have a thought. You already know what you're bringing. It's all cavalry. My list is all cavalry, or my list is all females, or, it's, you already know what you're doing. And so the questions as well as the mechanics are already answered for you. So it's super simple of just making the points work out.
Yep.
So when you get to the tournament type or the competitive game methodology and preparation, you honestly, as far as I'm concerned, you have to answer some basic questions with your list building. And as you add units to the list, there are certain things you need to be looking at. And right off the top, I'm just going to list them and then we'll talk about them. But basically, you want units that are going to achieve battle tactics in the AOS 3.0 world. You want to have units that are going to buff either your army or other units. You're going to need units that will be able to hold and control or contest objectives, and two different kinds of objectives, your backfield objectives as well as the forward objectives. You need to think about if a unit is tradable. Can it be traded for something of higher value? In which case you're kind of looking at the chess mentality. And then also, will it fit into a core battalion, or is it going to stand out on its own? And then, of course, there's the ultimate thing of, is it a hammer or is it an anvil? Hammer units are units that just go out and deal damage. Anvil units are units that eat damage, screens, and other things, Blight Kings, things like that. So to me, those are the overarching things that you look at when you add a unit to a list. Now, let's start going across the board from the top. Is the unit you're adding going to be able to do a battle tactic?
It's a really important thing to think about, particularly with tournament play being in GUR, right? If you're following the GHB.
Yep.
And how monsters are significant in that if you achieve battle tactics with monsters, you gain additional victory points. And so, do you have a monster that's going to be able to fulfill that role? Similarly, you get additional victory points for taking down monsters.
Yes.
So do you have units that are also able to take down monsters? And you're going to have to think hero monsters, because no one's really looking at Beasts of Chaos and being like, yeah, I can summon 10 different monsters and they're actually going to do something for me, right? But then you think about your battle tactics in another way, right? So do you have, if you're going to try and, seize the center, right, by having the most models within 6, are you doing that turn 1? How many models are you going to be able to get within range, right? I mean, technically you only need 1 unless for some reason they're able to forward deploy. But when it comes to it, you need to make sure that you've actually got some presence within 6 inches. So can you even move that far, right?
Yes.
And then that does go to deployment as well. But then you have to think about a whole bunch of the other tactics as well. And do you have the units that help you achieve it, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to just say, I am never going to obtain this particular battle tactic based on just how my army exists? And are you making sure that you are compensating for that? Because you need to get 5 different battle tactics that you can do. And you need to know what kind of flexibility you have in terms of obtaining them at different points in the game.
And to be honest, when I built my Stormcast list, I basically crossed out the battle tactic for having a monster do its thing, because I don't have them. And I'm not going to put in a Star Drake just to have that one battle tactic available to me. It's just not worth it points wise. And so I know going into every game, I am that battle tactic is not allowed for me. Yes, I can use the spell to turn myself into a monster for a turn. And, who knows? It might actually come up, but I also don't have any spellcasters. So, yeah, I'm basically locked out of that, but I know that going in. Mm-hmm. And you have to be answering that question as you build the list. Am I locking myself out of a battle tactic, or am I going so all in on a single battle tactic that I can only use once per game?
Yeah.
Am I overcommitting to a single battle tactic? Don't do that.
No, don't. You need to make sure you're flexible enough. And one thing, and we have it written down here, but your grand stratagem.
Oh.
You need to, I mean, that is made with your list.
Yes.
Right? So as you are making your list, you need to look at your grand stratagem and think, how am I going to obtain this? This is 3 victory points. This oftentimes wins the game, right? Because that 3-point swing, if you get yours and deny your opponent, these games get really close unless you're just blown off the board turn 1.
Right.
So you need to know your grand stratagem, and the fact that you need to be able to obtain your grand stratagem. So for example, right, if I'm building a Skaven list, right, it seems like I've been building Skaven lists recently.
Who knew?
Right? The one where you need to keep a wizard alive.
Yeah.
Probably taking that one.
Yeah.
Or in the case where you don't have a wizard and you don't have a monster, right? There's one for battle line, right?
Yeah.
Have one of your battle line
Hold the
alive.
line.
That would be one that you might go to in your list, right, Bill? Just to make sure you've got resilient guys. A lot of them are battle line. No problem.
You have to look at those grand stratagems like the one where you keep a wizard alive. It makes sense for Skaven. It probably makes sense for Tzeentch and potentially Lumineth.
Yep.
It makes 0 sense for, for my Stormcast list. It makes not a lot of sense for a lot of the destruction lists.
No.
There's also one for keeping a priest alive. Again, if you're priest heavy, that could make sense. If not, avoid it like the plague. And, if you really want a great overview of those grand stratagems, AOS Coach has a great breakdown of the stratagems the overall stratagems and how and when to use them and what to think about when you're putting that into your list. So jump over to AOS Coach and listen to that.
Just another shout out to Coach as he's doing his series
Yes.
on all the different factions,
Yes.
right? Where he's bringing,
Oh, God.
experts on essentially to talk about it. If you want to look at the fundamentals that we're talking about here and then look at another resource in order to think, how can I put this into action?
Yeah.
Go listen to the Coach breakdowns
Yep.
with those folks because they're really good.
Super good. Yes.
And Rob from the Honest Wargamers had a few as well.
Yeah.
Faction reactions. They're pretty good.
Facehammer's starting to do their breakdowns now, and they have done their overviews of ideas how to do lists in 3.0. So, use all the resources that are out there for you. Don't just listen to us. So let's move on to buffing.
Yeah, there are some armies that buff like no other.
Yes.
And there are some armies that just do not do it well.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Gloomspite.
Why are we always looking at them for the bad stuff?
I know, right? Like the coolest faction in the game right now. And
Is the most challenged.
yeah. So I think a good example of a really strong buffing army, Daughters of Cain.
Yeah.
They have multiple overlapping buffs from their shrines, from their spells. They're definitely one of the factions that touches every single phase. And they have, ongoing auras and buffs and things you need to do. You got your Witch's Brew. You need to try and cast Mind Razor. You have all these different things that go into taking what might otherwise be an okay unit and turning it into, a Slaughterfest.
The Vegematic.
Yeah. Seraphon, same thing. I mean,
my gosh.
they're little priests that just buff 1,000 times, and
Yes.
it's not even a prayer or anything. It's just, hey, it's on my war scroll, so roll, and
Yep. Boom. Here
there you go. And you need to look to see how they interact with others, because there are going to be some pieces that aren't heroes that may have some sort of benefit. Chaos War Shrine, right? I'm Mark Zinch, so I get, the ignore spell thing. So look for those pieces and how they work together, but also consider, particularly if you are, if you really like Night Haunt, their Holy Within thing is how you have to play the army. And so you need to do a lot more maneuvering and things like that to ensure you've got your Holy Withins covered.
They are the quintessential bubble-based army, and managing your bubbles with Night Haunt is huge. It's a handicap, but it keeps you from using the strengths of the army to be overwhelming because they're so overwhelming. Yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, and I want to hit this, and it seems like it goes without saying. As you're list building, make sure you have either the electronic book or your war scrolls available to you, because honestly, you'll be tossing units around and you'll start moving things, and you'll drop this unit and put that unit in, and you will forget that there was a synergy. There was a reason you had that in there 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then you swapped it out for this unit and all of a sudden realize, oh, that synergy is not there anymore.
Yep.
That interrelationship between those units is gone, and I screwed up. I have to put the original one back. So, I mean, it kind of goes without saying to have your scrolls available to you, but, while you're building a list, make sure you have that reference. I've done it before where I just jumped into War Scroll Builder and threw something together for a game in a half an hour, and you end up going, why did I take that when if I had taken those, it would be so much better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, make sure you're looking at things as you build it. As we alluded to earlier when we were talking about getting older gamers back in, this is an objective-based game.
Yes.
And as you're tossing units into a list, you have to almost look at every unit and how it's going to interact with an objective. Mm-hmm. And quite literally, you can make that mistake of saying, this unit is a backfield holding objective unit. That's my plan for that unit, when in reality, that unit should be up front doing combat. Yeah. It's actually more of a hammer. Blight Kings are incredibly resilient, but you don't want them hanging on your backfield objectives. They will hold that objective for an entire game. Trust me, they will. However, that's not the most efficient use of that unit. Some Plague Bearers might have been a little bit better at that.
Yes. Yeah.
So as you're adding every unit, think about what it's going to do to an objective. Also, think about, in this version of the game, objectives move, objectives disappear. So if you put a super slow unit on an objective and it disappears, is that unit going to be able to get to the next one, to the one that's still there, or to one of the prime objectives? Do you just simply say to hell with the regular objectives and only go after primes? As you're tossing units into your list, think about how they interact with the objectives. Now, there's some units you're going to put in your list that you know full well will have no effect on objectives whatsoever. It's the true hammer unit, and it's used to simply go and smash stuff. I'm looking at you, brutes. They're just there to smash stuff. If they happen to take an objective, great. But they're just out there to break things. Gorgruntus. Think about it as you're tossing each unit into the list and kind of theorying it. Is it going to hold an objective? Can it chase down an objective that potentially moves when the giant kicks it? Is it going to play into your objective game? Because this is where AOS 3.0 is won and lost. I know there's a lot of combat and there's a lot of death, but it's an objective-based game.
Yeah, it is. And if you play that part right, I mean, you could lose your entire army and still win the game.
Yeah.
Right? Because your opponent is trying to play deathmatch, and you're over there trying to win the game.
Yep.
So knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your units when it comes to capping objectives, mobility, that kind of thing, is going to really increase, I should say, the quality of your list building. Because you have to look and see, all right, so yes, I took Annihilators, right? I've got the Lord that can drop them in 7 inches away, but I didn't bring the Knight Vexillor.
Yeah.
So those guys are going to be stuck on that side of the board for probably the entire game. I learned from that lesson, so now I've got the Knight Vexillor, so after they drop down, and they're an interesting unit that's essentially hammer and an anvil, because they come down, dish out mortals, charge mortals. You know, they're on a 2-up save, and they hit, and they have 2 damage on their weapons. They're no joke.
Nope.
Right? The thing is, you can deliver those tactical nukes a second time with the Knight. And so you need to be very cognizant of those things when you're building your list.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have this amazing unit that gets stranded on one side of the board.
Yeah.
Gotrek is one of the ones that can sometimes have an issue running to the next objective.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, with the 4-inch move, oops.
It's so slow. You know, and they have to like run, and then I'm going to have to charge at this next one, you know, and so you can just sort of kite Godric around depending if they're just hyper-focused.
I mean, you know, for as amazing as Kragnos is, and to a limited extent, Archeon, they can only be in one place at one time.
Yeah.
So are they going to play into your objective game? Now, if you bring Kragnos, you're probably not bringing him for his objective holding. Same thing with Archeon. Yeah, and quite truly with Gotrek, you're not bringing him to hold an objective. He's should be in there to deliver hammers, and you have to have a way to move him around, because by and large in this game, the hardest hitting units are the slowest unit.
Yeah, for most part, yeah. I think that, I mean, Archeon's always going to be the exception, right? Like,
well, he's the exception to all rules.
Yeah, he doesn't care about your rule set, right? Yeah, I know. It's almost like you could have something where it says, like, you know, on a wound roll, if you roll 2 6s, unmodified 6s on a wound roll, your opponent dies. And it'd be like, yeah, that's probably right. It's just that absurd. Like, Archeon is
he's absurd.
Cancer on this game
right
now.
Should be 1,000 points.
Easy. Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. And coming with the objective stuff, so then you need to look at your spell casting or your abilities, like the Knight Vexillor. Do you have the ability to deliver units to objectives? How are you doing it? So this isn't, I would say, in some ways, as smooth brain as I've got a transport like I do in 40K, and so my 6-inch units, they can move 6 inches, now move 10 or 12, and then they can pop out, aside from KO. KO delivers onto objectives really well.
Yes, they do.
Right? It is a lot of smooth brain plays where it's just, oh, I'm going to fly and land near that objective, and now it's mine. On top of that, you need to figure out, am I going to have numbers to hold objective? As we talked about earlier, the new change to the Stormcast, where they're going to be counting as 3, shifts things immensely, right?
Tremendously for them.
There's no other army in the game that will have 3 points per basic model on an objective, aside from Sons of Behemoth. But now you're in a position where your models can count for more than their models, even though they've got mightier is rightier or whatever it is, right? You need to think about, are they going to be able to be the numbers I need, right? Beast Claw, you count as 10 models when you have your monster trucks.
Yeah.
So,
Owners who count, who just had their counting as more models nerfed by the Stormcast. Another nail in their coffin. But,
Stormcast are just like, we got this, guys.
Yeah, we know how to do it better.
You have to really think about those things. Can I get the numbers on the objectives, right? Skaven, how do you get the numbers on the objectives?
Yep.
Frankly, it's bodies. It's just sheer number of bodies.
Yes.
Here are my 60 clan rats for just shy of 400 points, and that's 60 wounds.
And chew through it.
Yes.
Can you chew through it?
And then talking about your synergies and your buffs and all that, you could have the Plague Priest there, give them Bless. So you have this massive unit of clan rats, with their normal 5-up save. They can be Mystic Shielded. They can be all-out defensed, particularly if you have Hunters in the Heartland. And then you have your Plague Priest to give them a 6-up ward save.
Ward save, yeah.
And so that's when you're looking at your synergies and your buffs. Are they doing all the things they need to do in order to stick around? Clan rats are not there to kill things. Yes, sometimes you can pop off a curse onto a unit and they will just delete it with mortals. But that's not what the unit is trying to achieve. It is not the hammer, right. that you're looking at.
In this case, it's the objective holding animal, for sure. And those are you have to answer that question in list building. Mm-hmm. Are you going to, it's super easy to take a triple reinforced battle line unit. Is it going to hold what you want it to hold or take what you want it to take? Simply having it having a battle line unit reinforced 2 times. Yeah, it makes for a big unit, but is it going to be able to do anything once it's on the table? Do you have the synergy to make it do things? Whatever your plan for it is.
And also looking at the boards and everything like that, because terrain's going to be a factor. There's at least 8 pieces of terrain for a 2,000 point game. Can you even move that unit?
Yeah.
How will they move? Do you try and set them up so they're, 3 ranks deep, 20 across? Or do you try and squish them together, to make more of a thick block? How do you handle that situation knowing that coherency is an issue, right?
Big thing.
So is it actually advantageous to take 60 clan rats?
Right.
Or would it be more advantageous to take 2 units of 40?
Yep.
Major considerations.
Lots of questions that you have to ask in the list building phase. Now, there's another concept out there, and this isn't talked about a lot, but units die in this game.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, they really do. There's damage in this game. I know.
I'll rewrite my list now.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. Yeah. The question is, are you willing, as you put a unit in, ask yourself if you're willing to trade that unit, or is it so vital to your plan that you have to keep it alive, in which case you need to bring another unit to screen it or another unit to help keep it alive.
Yeah.
So a unit of 5 Liberators, to me, is a tradable unit. It's 95 points, it's 10 wounds, it's got a reasonably good save, decent damage output, but it's out there to go up against other battle line units that are hopefully more expensive than it, and it can either hold it up, or in the case of, say, a giant, can it delay it for a turn, perhaps 2, in which case I have effectively limited that piece to meaninglessness for 2 turns or a turn, and that is a win. That's a win for that unit, and it's made up its 95 points. But if I have that unit of Annihilators coming in at 180 points for 3 models, and like I did in our game, I drop it in, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do, and it became a non-factor, and it was a waste of 180 points in a 600-point game. A third of the army was useless. Bad idea.
And that comes down to, again, making sure you have your right support pieces and the right leaders in your army. Because if you had swapped out your Lord Arcanum for the Lord, what is the adjutant? I can't remember what the new one is.
The Lord Imperatant.
Imperatant, thank you. Lord Imperatant. Yeah, he drops them in 7 inches away.
Yeah.
That's 3 units that get mortal wounds.
Yeah.
That's a 7-inch charge.
Yep.
So much easier, especially when you're re-rolling as Annihilators.
Yep.
And so that one thing, frankly, likely would have shifted that game.
That would have changed that game completely. Yeah. just a bad choice of leaders because I wanted to have a magic phase.
Yeah.
Did it do me any good to have it? No, it didn't in the overall scheme of things. So it was that decision was bad at list building, and it just amplified on the table.
Right.
So these are the questions you have to be looking at. And again, game experience comes along. I will never take Annihilators now without the Lord Impertinent. So, sorry, I cannot. That's his name from now on.
Lord Impertinent.
So, yeah. And, again, like you said, the Vexillor, Annihilators are a great unit.
Mm-hmm.
However, they become a one-shot deal if you don't have another way to move them around.
Yep.
Or unless the game is the Vice, where they can just chase the stuff to the center and do their thing. But, those are concerns. You need something to move them around. So, again, are you willing to trade those points for what that unit is going to do? And are you going to get the value? And the idea of trading is nebulous in that, like I said, a unit of 5 Liberators holding up a Mega Gargant for a turn is amazing.
Yeah.
Or engaging something on your opponent's side, say one of his amazing shooting units. Okay, so maybe I move that 95-point unit of Liberators into a unit that can put out 25 mortal wounds with their shooting, and maybe they get wiped out to a man. However, did that free up the rest of my army to do what it needed to do because they couldn't shoot at them? Now, all of a sudden, yeah, I lost that 95 points for no gain, but it was worth it. So those are things you have to look at while you're list building and you're kind of planning what that unit is going to do. Are you willing to give up those points to achieve what your plan for that unit is?
Well, think back to 40K when Overwatch was just something you did. Instead of having to, spend a command point to Overwatch, you would regularly send in a chaff unit,
Yep.
right? A unit just to absorb it. I think giant rats in Skaven are a great example.
Yep.
Aether Wings, another great example, where you're sending them in to really just absorb Unleash Hell.
Yeah.
Right? Because then your hard-hitting unit will then charge in. So it's very important that you know when and where to do that. Because, yes, you could drop your Annihilators down and you're like, I'm going to try and take out all these Sentinels, from LRL. But they've got Unleash Hell, and maybe they got off, their Sunmetal weapons for their bows.
Yeah.
So they're mortal wounding on 5s.
Yepper.
And so it doesn't matter if you got a 2-up save.
Yeah.
You can get melted off the board from those guys. Right? Like literally a third of their shots are mortal wounds.
Yeah.
So then, okay, Aether Wings charge in, right? If they Unleash Hell on the Aether Wings, great.
Yep.
If they don't, all right, well, then I'm just going to charge in the Annihilators, and you can't.
You can't unleash hell on me.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, those are the things you have to think about. Are you willing to trade those points? Next up for concerns is, are you going to be able to put this thing into a core battalion?
Yes. Very important right now. Hunters of the Heartland is pretty much, I don't know how many lists you're going to see without that other than like Sons of Behemoth, right?
Well, yeah.
Because Hunters of the Heartland is you are, frankly, just negating some of the most powerful abilities of Monstrous Rampage.
Yes.
Because one of the things that is completely going to hamstring you is if that thing roars your unit and they cannot receive the benefit of command abilities in the
combat phase. That means no all-out defense.
Exactly. Or all-out attack, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if they're able to pop it off on a hero who, may have like a great command ability in the combat phase, right? So think Volturnos, right? So like imagine if Volturnos got turned off on the 3rd turn because he was near a monster and got roared, right? You can't put him in, the Heartlands battalion, but it's just showing you how strong Monstrous Rampage can be.
Yep.
And so being able to, but you could put the eels in Hunters, and so when Volturnos issues his orders, right, as long as he's not roared at, they can't be roared at, they could still receive the benefit of it.
Right.
So really think about, are you going to be in Hunters, to be frank? Like if you're Astral Templars, it doesn't matter. Astral Templars actually, just with the new book, just gets the flexibility of not being forced into that core battalion. Right. But so many armies are looking at that, and you have to think about how many drops.
There's the concern now for, are you going to be in a battle regiment where you can be a 1 drop? Does it make sense to fit certain units into that and to stretch the boundaries of that to get that 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 drop in hopes of snagging the turn. Is that a concern for you? Is that something your army is being based on?
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely think about the battalions. And I mean, I'm personally a huge fan of the Vanguard battalion because of the ability to give it free run without a command point.
Oh, yeah.
That can actually be huge for slow-moving units.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's something to think about. What battalion are they going to go into, and does it make sense to have them in there?
And, what are you hoping to achieve with your battalions as well, right? So we talk about turn priority being such a big thing, right? That's what everyone's looking at when they're calculating their drops, right? Is this something where I, on average, have 4 to 5 drops, or do I fit into the 1 drop? And what am I gaining for the additional drops, right? Am I getting the immunity to Monstrous Rampage? Am I getting an extra enhancement? Are you getting the extra run? Those are all things that, really need to be thought about long and hard in terms of how am I going to even structure this? Because certain units do need to go into certain battalions. On top of that, you have to think about whether or not you want to give up the priority, because your army could be resilient enough that it does not matter.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up specifically is I'm thinking of Magakin of Nurgle.
Oh, yeah.
They are so stinking resilient. It's almost disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get it, folks? You can laugh. It's right. Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. That I'm up against KO. Sure, have turn 1.
Yeah.
Try and shoot me down. I don't care.
Yeah, those are times when you can not care about turn priority. But if you are based on the Alpha Strike idea, if you're destruction and you need to get up there and contest things right away, that's a concern, and that's where the battle regiment becomes super important. Whereas, like you said, if I'm playing Nurgle, no, I don't really care. Maybe I want that extra move. Maybe I want the extra enhancement. So I put my things in there. And remember, in this edition, you can have multiple core battalions.
Yep.
So every unit should be in some kind of battalion. You should not have that entry not answered in every unit.
Mm-hmm.
They're really easy to fill out. So, and they have some pretty hefty advantages.
Oh, yeah.
So as you're list building, keep that in mind.
Also keep in mind, too, again, going to priority, is it necessary for you to have the first hero phase in order to establish your resilience?
Yes.
So just the Nurgle example again. Looking back to, let's say you're doing mostly mortals, do you need the Harbinger of Decay to pop his, resilience aura?
Yep.
If you do, then you need to actually factor in trying to go first.
Yeah.
So, I mean, certainly Magakin's never been a Alpha Strike. I don't even know if it's a Beta Strike army. In terms of like how fast your units can move across the board, how they can pop up across the board. They're not very teleporty.
No.
I think it's, oh God, I forget his name. The guy with the ship that teleports around the Blight Kings. What's his name?
God damn.
Anyway, like he's really like the teleporty part of it. What Magakin does is they try and slingshot.
Yeah.
And with the change to the tree, slingshotting is not so much a turn 1 thing anymore. And even then, slingshotting usually didn't take out their army in the slingshot. You just got into their lines.
You just got in there and bogged them down.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
And of course, before Blight System went away, having the, Rend 1 on your freaking Blight Kings was just so good. That needs to be baked into their war scroll now, I think.
It does.
I don't care if you increase their points like 10 points or something.
Yeah.
Give me Rend.
Give me the Rend. God.
Yeah, so good. So good back in the day. So after, you've looked at your core battalions, how you're fitting in and everything like that, you need to just double check. Did you set up yourself so you have hammers?
Yeah.
And did you set up yourself so you have anvils? And one of the things that I think is a misstep by a lot of players initially is trying to get Death Stars going.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm going to have so much concentrated power projection in this one space that you forsake the rest of it.
Yeah. You synergize a couple of units and a couple of heroes so much that the rest of your army is just literally islands on their own and they get picked off and killed.
Yeah.
And unless that Death Star can really do some amazing work, chances are you're heading down a road that you can't recover from.
Yeah, one of the things that was floating around for a while, and I never agreed with it, but people were talking about like the 9 Stormfiend list in Skaven.
Yeah.
Where you go Scryer so you can reinforce them twice, and you just try and like shoot everything off the board and have, you know, the 3 melee options with a Blade of Wounds, so that way you can try and survive and weather the storm. I've never seen it used to great effect, right? Because there's so much concentrated power there. It is literally like 945 points for those 9 models.
Yeah.
And so half of your army is dedicated to this one thing that may or may not do what you want it to do. So you could free that up. And I'm not saying don't take Stormfiends, you know, just take them in 6s instead. And you freed up 315 points when you have an army that is significant. That's like a Verminlord Corruptor plus change.
Yeah.
You know, there's enough there to play around with it. So is your hammer too hammery?
Yeah.
By being a Death Star. And then sometimes you can just have anvils that are too anvil-y. Magakin again, I just have a list of Plague Bearers. You're not going to kill them, but I'm not really doing anything else.
But yeah, am I achieving anything else on the table? No, not really. And you can run into that fallacy really quickly, having too many anvil units. And then as objectives start going away, or the objective game changes on you, you're not able to track it and get to it quickly enough that your big units matter. And again, I think it's pretty much borne out that this is the MSU edition of AOS.
Yep.
It makes sense in a lot of cases to reinforce units. Most of the time, it doesn't make sense to max reinforce.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you are better off not even reinforcing once. Although there's a lot of, you have to look at, in the list building phase, you have to really look at, does it make sense to have 10 or 20 or 5 or 10? And some of the units are still worded to where if you have 20, you get this bonus.
Yep.
I think those are going to be written out.
Mm-hmm.
From what we've seen so far, they've been written out a lot in the FAQ. So I think by and large, that's going to go away.
Yeah, Skaven survived that.
Well, because that's part of their motif.
Yeah. It's their identity.
So,
you know? Whereas like Plague Bearers no longer get the -2 to hit. And some people might say, oh, well, but that cancels out like 2 buffs on their hit. That was significant.
It's huge.
Right?
That's a big change for them.
Yeah, but still -1 is still good. You know, there is definitely, shifting there. There are some units that are just so powerful that, again, Archaon, a Death Star unto himself, right? And yes, he is 830 points. It boggles my mind that he is cheaper than 9 Stormfiends, given what he does.
Yeah.
And what he doesn't do, which is die.
Yeah.
Like, when you have him in Disciples of Tzeentch, he's just a freaking freight train. Where he goes, he owns. On top of that, you have pink horrors running around that we talked about the cancer they are, but
yeah,
just splitting 1,000 times over. Like, unless you can just somehow pick up the unit, they're just going to keep wrecking, and they're not going to go anywhere. They're tar pitch you down while Archaon goes around and just assassinates whatever
everything
he
else
needs
on the
to.
Table. Yeah,
that's an instance where, like, I don't know if you can get Gotrek into combat with him and make it so he can't retreat. Like, Archaon can't retreat because his base size is so big. He's able to actually just stick in there with Gotrek, and neither of them will do anything for the remainder of the battle other than just try and fight.
Again, that's a good trade.
Yeah.
I'll take that trade any day.
Yeah. Particularly because Gotrek can get there. Like, he can take Archaon down if he spikes high enough.
Yeah.
It's just that with all the healing and everything, it's just sort of a back and forth.
Oh, it'll be a slugfest.
It really is.
Jesus.
But again, when you're looking at these really powerful units, oftentimes they're monsters and heroes, and their base size is absurd. So Archaon, with one of the biggest base sizes in the game, right? Him, Lrl, there's a particular amount of real estate that they take up.
Yes.
So when you're planning out your army, this is where I think MSU is so strong again. It's because you can actually zone out Archaon from moving, and he's forced just to charge into the thing that he needs, that he can.
Yeah.
So it's
That he doesn't want to.
exactly like, oh crap, you mean I have to charge those 10 storm vermin because there's no place for me to actually put my base down?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Mega Gargants.
Yeah.
Is you have to force choices onto them that they can't answer easily. And some of that is in list building. Some of that is in play experience. And again, you don't kind of want to make a list that's designed to fight just Archaon unless you
Exactly.
know all you're doing is going up against Archaon. If you're making an all-comer tournament list, you got to be a little more flexible.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on to some of the really key things to look at when you're putting units into your list.
All right.
And, we've given some overarching ideas of what a unit should be in a huge sense, in a grand scope sense. Should it be objective control? Should it be an alpha strike? Should it be something to hold? Now, let's look at the units in terms of what do they achieve on an individual basis. And some of the things you have to look at is what's the unit's mobility? What's its reach? This is where the shooting meta starts to rear its ugly head.
Yeah.
Shooting units may not have the greatest mobility. They have a heck of a lot of reach. And if you're looking at something like the skewers for the Cruel Boys, maximizing that reach is huge. It's how they're going to earn their points back is by taking down the big monsters or the units of things that you don't like. Long strike, Vanguard Raptors with the long strike thing with their 30-inch, potentially 30-inch range. They can cover most of these boards now. Mm-hmm. With the smaller board size, something to look at. Does your unit have the reach? Now, look at Annihilators. They are an incredibly hard-hitting unit that have almost no reach at all. They have a 4-inch move, and they don't have the ability to run and charge. So you are plodding across the board with those guys. So as you are building and you're putting things into your army, look at what your reach distances are and whether or not the unit can project any threat. Can it hold a flank by itself? Can a unit of Kurnoth Hunters, can it basically hold a quarter of the board all by itself? And chances are the answer is yes. They can project a lot of power and a lot of damage. Some units can't do that. Some units don't even have missile weapons. So you have to answer that question of, am I able to project the power that I'm putting into this list in the way that I think I need to? It's a tough question to answer.
It really is. I mean, there's so many interactions because you could just sit here and think, yes, this is a strong unit by itself. But it's not going to be by itself, and it's going to be opposed.
Yes.
And so you have to think, not just am I projecting the power forward in terms of being able to do the output, do I have the reach, but what is the output and reach on the other side? So when you talk about the long strikes having the 30-inch range, that's huge because a lot of shooting, frankly, a lot of shooting in this game is 24.
Yeah.
Even the Cruel Boys stuff, if they don't move, they have a 27-inch range.
Yeah.
They don't hit that 30-inch mark. You also have to think about spell casting too, in the same vein. So a lot of spells have like Holy Withins, and they don't have necessarily terribly long distances. Usually it's about
18 is,
18
on
average.
the top end. Yeah.
I know that Krondys, his Atavistic Tempest, is actually a 24-inch range, which is like, whoa.
Yeah, that's something you're like, wow.
But then you also have the ability to unbind, unless it's Seraphon, 30 inches, right? So you have to ask yourself, do I want them to be in range of unbind, or do I need them outside of that range? Because if I don't get off Archon's 3 Mystic Shields the first turn, then I know that they're going to shoot me off the board.
Right.
You have to think about that too. It's what else could reach you.
You hit an important point that I don't think we've talked about yet is, remember when you're building your list, you're usually thinking about your end of it. Also try to think about what you might be facing and what the current bugaboo in the meta is. Is your list going to be able to counter those things? And I mean, right now the bugaboos are Daughters, Caradron, Lumineth, and Gargants.
Well, I think Archaon Zinch is the big one.
I don't even want to talk about that because I will just look at that game and go, okay, you win. Bye.
All right, shake hands.
Yeah, see ya.
Good to
Thanks. Go get a drink. I mean, literally, is it fun to play against that? No, it's not.
I mean, Archaon showing up on the other side of the table is it's just not fun to play against.
No.
Doesn't mean if you're going to a tournament, you got to be ready for it. Just in the sense of,
if you're expecting to do well, you have to have a plan for the Archaon list and the Mega Gargant list and the Lumineth list. So, I mean, you have to think about, and when you're building your list, try not to think of just what works good for you and the synergies that you're putting together. Because keep in mind, the other guy's going to probably shoot that leader out from under you. And now you don't have that buff. Can you operate without it?
It makes me think of competitive card games. Think about the Magic the Gathering. So you have a deck that does a thing. You have some decks that are just super straightforward. I'm playing red deck wins.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and swing as many little monsters at you and try and burn you down as quickly as possible. And I don't have much recourse for anything else. Then you have more control style decks like, gosh, I played Lantern Control for a long time, which is just slowly grinding them down and just taking the pieces away from your opponent. And it's like hardly interactive. I'm just denying you things. But you always have like a sideboard, right? And so the idea of the sideboard is, what are my weaknesses and how do I make up for that in game 2, game 3? Unfortunately, we don't have sideboards. And so you need to be thinking about that in list construction.
Yes.
How are you going to account for not just your weaknesses, but for what could be really strong in the meta? And maybe you are playing Tzeentch Archaon and you're like, yeah, I'm not too concerned.
Yeah.
Except for like Lumineth spellcasting can, hamstring me a little bit at certain times. So that's the big one I'm really training against. But then
there's a tool for that, which we're going to get to.
Oh yeah. No, it's gonna be fantastic.
Yep.
That's my thought on that.
Another thing that you can look at as you're adding units to your list is the mental pressure aspect of that unit. And we all know this when you put Gotrek in your list, when you put Kragnos, when you put Croak, the opponent looks at that and goes, oh my God, I have to face that. Those are the givens. Those are obvious mental pressure ideas. Other units that you can put into your list can also cause your opponent some mental pressure, some questioning of what they're going to do just because of what that unit is. And I'll go back to, like long strikes, the Vanguard Raptors with the long strike bows. As you explain to your opponent, hey, this unit has the 30-inch range, blah, blah, blah. Or the Celestar Ballista, this unit has this range, and, for every hit, it potentially, a D6 worth of damage, blah, 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 or a D6 worth of hits. You're forcing that person to think, ooh, I have to look at how I deploy. I have to look at how I do these other things. Just about every faction has something in it that can cause your opponent to take a step back and think about how they're going to deal with that. Idoneth Deepkin with eels. You have to be thinking of how do you weather that storm that the eels are going to create. Daughters of Cain. How am I going to weather that onslaught that they're capable of doing at a couple of points during the game? A unit of Gore-Gruntas. That's terrifying for a lot of players because a unit of Gore-Gruntas that smashes into something can usually delete it. As you're adding units to your list, think about, it's super easy to build a Nurgle list with lots of Plague Bearers and a few Blight Kings, a Great Unclean One, and some of this. What if you throw in Horticulus Slimex and make them go, what's that for? Or the Glockkin. There's not a whole lot of lists with those things in there, and that can cause your opponent to start mentally on the back foot as they're trying to go, ooh, how do I answer that question that he just posed? When you're putting units in, think about some of the underrepresented units. One of the units I love to use in my Nurgle list is Epidemus. He has that thing where he's going to do different things based on the amount of damage that's done in the course of the game. And that becomes a thing that your opponent has to look at and go, damn, I've got to do something about that because that is just hurting me every single die roll. It's not fun. I have to kill that thing. And so you're giving them different questions they have to answer rather than just, how do I beat a ranged unit? How do I beat a static defender? How do I beat a hammer unit? Think about how to put some pressure on your opponent that they don't necessarily see every game, or they're not used to seeing at all because it's very underserved. And I think in this edition, there's a lot of units out there that haven't seen a lot of play in a long time that are all of a sudden creeping up and looking like, wow, those are really good now.
Yeah, it's sort of the strategy of playing the player.
Yeah.
One of the things that mental pressure does is it causes people to make mistakes, and it causes them to maybe not pay attention, right? It's sort of fatiguing. So, for example, anyone who plays against Lumineth Realm Lord and has had an hour-long hero phase completely understands just sort of the mental fatigue you have when you're just sitting there like, hurry up. People like to use that to wear their opponents down. Like, they will use their hour-long hero phase to do that. Of course, make sure you call them out on that, call slow play, that kind of stuff. That level of sort of mental pressure is something that you also need to be ready for yourself when you're going into it. One of the things that can totally cause you to lose the game is forgetting rules.
Oh, boy.
And so we get to the tools that help you with that very quickly here. But you need to make sure that you have enough mental space to be able to think through everything, and if not, have some type of reminder to help you make sure that you're on track for everything. Okay? There are a lot of smart people out there. There's just too many rules.
Yes.
There's no shame in having tools to help you
That's right.
alleviate mental pressure in order to make sure that you're at the top of your game.
And don't forget to ask the question. When you see Horticulus Slimex and you have never played against that model before, ask them, hey, can I see the War Scroll for that? I don't know what it does. And they honestly should be forthcoming with it, or, just look it up, or go to the TO and say, hey, I need to see what this thing does. Don't let your opponent play mind games with you. My idea of mental pressure wasn't to sit there and try to be a jerk in a game. I'm just saying, bring things that not everybody does. Go a little anti-meta now and then, so that that person has to answer questions that they're not potentially ready to do yet.
Yeah, we call those rogue decks, right?
Yeah.
And they're always super fun to play. Any anti-meta army deck, whatever it is, right, is always so interesting because you're playing a whole different game.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to figure out what the heck to do. And good players will adapt really quickly and learn how to change it up, right? But a lot of times people are going, I don't know how to answer that right now. And so they have to try and work through it. In the meantime, you're gaining advantage.
Yep. So why don't we move on? We've been starting to get into the tools side of this a little bit. Let's move into some of the tools that are really super useful in list building. And of course, the most obvious one is on the Warhammer community site, the list builder.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the de facto now. Some people swear by Battlescribe. I have always kept up my subscription to Battlescribe because I like it as well.
Yeah.
But so many other tools depend on the output from War Scroll Builder that it's kind of, whatever. If you are more computer dependent, I want to use my Battlescribe, then, look into it. It's a super capable tool.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is great. It is super good.
It's very efficient too. I really like how it just so quickly puts everything where it needs to be in a way that's easy to look at and be like, okay, that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
It's really great. And Battlescribe, well, I use that thing for a long time.
Yep. I used to use Army Builder from Lone Wolf, but then they just stopped pretty much supporting it. So,
I've never used that one.
It was pretty good for a while, but then it just seems like they don't love it anymore. So, anyway, the one that where you were kind of alluding to is AOS reminders.
Yes.
If you don't have AOS reminders, you are either have an eidetic memory and you can remember everything about your army, or you're amazing, because AOS reminders, it's aosreminders.com. You plug in your list from War Scroll Builder, and it basically breaks down the game for you and says, at every point in the game, this is what you need to remember. This is what happens at this point. Start of the hero phase, in the hero phase, end of the hero phase, pre-game, before, when you take a wound, when you make a save. It has all those little breakdowns so that you can sit there and remember, oh yeah, I forgot that unit has +1 save if they're, okay, I remember that now. super handy. We've had Davis E. Ford.
Yep.
We've had him on the show before. Probably try to get him again one of these days because
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Reminders is such a fantastic piece of work. It's amazing.
It's so helpful that like I could never forsake it. Like normal casual games, or if I'm just learning stuff, I will just go through and try and see how much I can remember on my own.
Yeah.
But when I'm getting into the serious games, I need it, and it's so accessible, so easy to use. And because you can't remember everything.
No.
Don't try and be superhuman.
And we're in a new edition. Understand that you're going to not remember some of the little nuances. And then add on top of that, you have probably a new list because of all the new things in this list building strata that we have now. Yep. So yeah, don't be afraid to be consulting your AOS reminder sheets. I do it all the time because I simply cannot. I made a joke with Elric that I was going to get one of those quarterback things for my hand to remember stuff. And I did, I did. I actually went and bought that thing just because, I can't remember all this stuff. I just don't have the brain power for it. So another tool that is pretty much a go-to for me is ListBot. If you don't know about ListBot, it's aoslistbot.herokuapp.com. The link is in the show notes. Also, there's AOS Coach did a short, 15-minute video on ListBot. But basically what happens is you take the output of War Scroll Builder, you pop it into ListBot, and it breaks down your list and shows you exactly where you are at in terms of mobility, in terms of magic, in terms of defense, damage output, and it can show you graphically where your weak point is, and you might just look at it and go, oh, damn, I didn't realize I was that far down in damage output. I need to swap out a unit.
It's so handy for that because oftentimes we can get lost in the weeds when we're making lists.
Easy.
And so, I don't want to make it seem like it should be work, okay? But think of it like when you're doing this, create a list, get the initial concept, get it out of your mind, put it down on paper. Mm-hmm. And then what you need to do is take a step back, look at it again, run it through Analyzer, have someone else look at it too.
Sure.
Right? Do you think this is going to be viable? What do you think its weaknesses are? Right?
You wrote in here a really good point about humility when you're writing a list. And, throw your list out there and don't be afraid to take the slings and arrows. There's a lot of people that have different ideas. Throw it out there. See what other people think. If you have guts, throw it up on Facebook. Throw it up on Reddit. If you want to throw it up on a Discord, there are Discords for just about every faction. Hell, throw it up on our Discord. We'll look at it.
Yeah.
And, tell you, someone will give you some ideas and point you in potentially different directions. You don't have to take that as the word of, just because somebody says, no, your list isn't going to work. Hey, only take advice from people that you would actually take advice from.
Yeah.
If you think that person's wrong, try it. Experience is also an incredibly good teacher,
It is. And so when you come into it, you're going to have to test your list, right?
Yeah.
Particularly tournament play. You can't just walk in and say, this is the list and it's going to win.
And it wins.
Right? Particularly like you're walking in with Heathen Knights of Slanesh. That army is such a finesse army that if you don't take the time to actually think it through and apply it and try and work it out for yourself, then you're going to walk in and just get hosed, right?
In a big way.
Particularly because it is a little overcosted.
A little. Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to be generous. It's overcosted. And so you need to know that going in. You need to figure out, what am I going to do to get better, to hone the list? If someone is tournament prepping too, and they've got the list that are boogeymen, then you play against the boogeymen. How do I handle these particular scenarios? Because it's easy enough to conceptualize.
Look at what we're doing, for New Orleans. We're putting together a bunch of different lists to play against.
Yep. So we have all of those in order to hone it. How am I going to play my Stormcast against this? How am I going to tackle Tzeentch Archaon? How am I going to do all of these things? You need to know. And if you don't know, you're going to get caught off guard by something. So get your practice in.
Yep, for sure. And don't believe your list is perfect right out the gate, because chances are it's not. And let other people tell you where it's not good. Hell, let Listbot tell you where it's not good.
There you go.
You know, it's not just driven by pure math analysis. It also looks at how do these units perform historically.
Yep.
So that's kind of our list building. I think we've kind of wrapped that one up.
I think we did.
It's an overarching, it's a 20,000 foot view, but it will hopefully will give you some ideas as to things to look for, especially in this edition.
Yep.
The biggest thing is don't be afraid to bounce it off of someone else or another group, or, throw it up on a Discord. Find the Discord for your faction. Find the Reddit for your faction and see what they say. See what other people that have maybe more game experience than you do say about your list.
Yep.
As you're writing your list, we concentrated on sort of tournament and matched play. A lot of this stuff goes out the window if you're doing a narrative list.
Correct.
Or if you're, playing Noob Hammer, you're introducing people to the game. Yeah, don't be throwing that, mind-bending unit into that game. It's probably not the best idea.
One of the worst things for narrative is tryhards.
Yes.
Who are, in essence, trying to make a competitive list in a narrative setting, because the narrative setting is supposed to be interactive and story-driven. You have to create a story for yourself and your character and your army, and there's a reason why you're progressing through. It shouldn't just be like, this is how I'm going to smash face, right? Because then you end up having Marathi or Teclis or Archaon in a narrative list, which, why? Why are they here? They shouldn't be. It's too tryhardy.
Or an orc boss with all the buffs.
Hey, I'm not taking Gazgul. Like, it's literally just what's allowed by the rules, right? Because I can build that character into that legendary thing, And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to play with Beast Nagas, and then
turns out they're good.
Yeah. Oh, they do things. Okay, sorry guys. This was a really fun one. I really like talking about this. Like, it's theory crafting-ish, right?
Yep.
Being able to look through and think through what are the major issues when we're doing this. And so I hope that if you're newer or been around for a while, it gave you some things to think about.
Yep.
You can try and pull a list off the net, and that net list may not work for you because it's just not in your bandwidth. But then you find something else, and it's perfect.
I've said it 100 times. Russ Veal could put out a list that he used to win whatever GT it was he just won, and I could pilot that exact same list and go 1-4.
Yep.
At best. There's experience counts a lot. Play this list and don't be afraid. I know there's a whole group of people that say play a list at least 5 times before you change it, because you don't know. One game is not a bellwether for really what might have to change in your list.
Yep.
I can tell you right now, I changed my hero in my Stormcast list based on the fact that my Annihilators did nothing in our game. And I'm like, there's no other situation where this is going to be different. This is just a basic mistake. Oops. So you can make those kinds of changes, but, play it a couple of times against different opponents. You might get ruffle stomped against KO, and yet you might take down Lumineth Realm Lords, but if you change your list, you'll never know that.
Yep.
Experience. Play it a few times. But again, don't be afraid to change it. Don't be afraid to experiment.
Nope.
And, if you don't have a particular unit that you need, ask somebody if you can proxy. Hey, this unit of 10 Plague Bearers is actually 6 Storm Fiends. Play around with it.
Yeah.
Find a group that you can actually work with and test your ideas. And before you buy all the models. So should we close it out?
Yeah, I think that'll do it for the main show.
Yeah.
Don't forget to find us on social media. We're available on most podcast streaming services. We are on Discord. Again, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook if you want to get the link. We are on Facebook. We're very active on Discord. And so audience members, it's a really great community that's building up there right now. Yep. I really enjoy it. Again, you can find us on Instagram at the Rolling Bad Podcast. We're also available on Twitter. So please, like, follow, subscribe, all those wonderful things we always ask you guys to do.
Smash the like button.
And in particular, thank you to our Patreons.
Yes. God bless you, folks.
You guys are so just appreciated for helping support the show.
And stay tuned for After Dark.
If you would like to get in touch with us, you can reach us at our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/rollingbadpodcast, all one word. Our Patreon page is at www.patreon.com/rollingbadpodcast, again, all one word. The Twitter account for the show is at rolling_bad. And our individual Twitters are, for me, at Bill Castello, BILLCASTELLO.
And you can reach me, Joshua Alt, on Twitter at Anoyoe. That's at ANOYOE. On Instagram, I can be found at Heretic Model. On Facebook, I can be found as Joshua Alt.
All of our guests on the show will have their contact information in that show's show notes. The music in the show is used courtesy of Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com and used under the Creative Commons license. The Rolling Bad podcast is protected under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Information for this license can be found at creativecommons.org.